You call this salvation, Vega, while the ashes of everyone I loved still choke the sky?
The oath of the stars is absolute, yet even a regressor must know that some paths lead only to deeper darkness.
Hello, everyone. This story is a dark, high-stakes epic that follows the desperate journey of Lee Shin-huk, a man who has lost everything, and Vega, the enigmatic goddess who holds the power to rewind time itself. When the world is devoured by the unstoppable heavenly demon Kwon-oh-jin, one man decides that death isn't the end. It's just the beginning of his final stand to rewrite fate. If you are ready to witness the rise of the regressor, subscribe to Tribe to Throne. If you had the power to restart your life after a catastrophe, would you change the past or fear the future? Enjoy the watch.
The world lies in total ruin. Everything visible is engulfed in raging flames. The sky is choked with thick black smoke. Nature itself appears to be dying. Streets that once bustled with life are now silent graveyards. Mangled bodies litter the cracked gray asphalt. An armed warrior kneels over a fallen corpse. He stares down at the broken man on the ground. The warrior demands to know why everyone had to perish by his hand. The defeated heavenly demon lies motionless in the dust. He was the one who shattered the world into pieces. A soft voice echoes from the side. The speaker observes that the awakened Lee Shin-huk performed his task well. The young man turns his head to look back. He sees the goddess Vega standing before him. Vega, the star of the constellation Ara, glows with a faint light. She declares that Lee Shin-huk destroyed the heavenly demon and saved the world. Lee Shin-huk asks with a trembling voice if she truly claims he saved them. He shouts that he refuses to hear such words. He gestures to the carnage, asking if this hell can be called salvation. He points out that everyone they loved perished at the monster's hands. 10 years ago, mysterious gates appeared across the globe. Unidentified monsters poured out of these portals in endless waves. The world transformed into a living nightmare. Over half of the Earth's territory fell to the invading beasts. Gods known as constellations descended from the heavens. They bestowed upon humanity the stigmata, representing the zodiac signs. These markings granted chosen warriors the power to fight back. Those who received these gifts became known as the Awakened. Humanity finally found a flicker of hope. Light returned to the world, at least for a time. Then, the heavenly demon Kwon-oh-jin appeared. He began as a simple, ordinary awakened human. After his awakening, he gained the power of the black sky. He possessed the ability to absorb the stigmata of the gods. He consumed the markings of countless heroes and constellations alike. Tens of thousands of awakened joined forces to stop him. Even rival constellations set aside their differences to fight. The monster single-handedly devoured the stigmata of thousands. Noble constellations and brave warriors alike were consumed. The world met its final, tragic end at his hands. Vega observes that the heavenly demon is finally dead. She notes that Lee Shin-huk delivered the killing blow. She offers to grant his wish as per the Oath of the Stars. The Oath of the Stars is a power held only by the North Star constellations. It possesses the strength to grant any single desire. Lee Shin-huk replies that he wants to return to the past. He demands to be sent back to the beginning. Vega asks if he truly wants to relive that terrible history. She warns him that an even more desperate future might await. Lee Shin-huk declares that he will change the outcome this time. A regressor is the only being capable of defying fate. He vows to rewrite the history that led to this destruction. Vega agrees to his terms. She prepares to send the young man back through time. Lee Shin-huk asks her to grant him her specific stigma. Vega warns that her mark is unbearable for a human. She notes that even the heavenly demon could not obtain it. Lee Shin-huk insists that he is the savior of this world. He tells her that if he cannot endure it, he has no reason to go back. Vega acknowledges his resolve. She promises to descend to him in person once he reaches the past. Lee Shin-huk notes that his memories will likely fade upon arrival. Vega agrees that he may forget her. She adds that if he carries her stigma, she will recognize him as a regressor. If he survives the process, she will make him her personal apostle. Becoming an apostle of Vega is the ultimate goal for any awakened. The young man fixes the heavenly demon's face in his mind. He vows to find where the monster first registered as an awakened one. He intends to destroy his enemy before the nightmare begins. Vega begins the ritual to fulfill her promise. She warns him that he is now a star-defying entity. The stigma manifests within the body of Lee Shin-hook. Vega's mark burns bright, overwriting the existing Pixis stigmata. A warning flashes that the power is too great to contain. Lee Shin-hook's awakening process fails. He collapses as his body struggles to process the energy. His younger brother stands nearby, powerful enough to be chosen. The young man wonders why this burden fell to him instead. He asks if his brother deserved a better fate. He wonders if he should have stayed by his brother's side. A system message indicates the man has entered energy deflection mode. Lee Shin-hook looks up, startled by the familiar voice. He asks the man if he is doing all right. The young man realizes the heavenly demon stands right before him. He cannot believe his eyes. The energy deviation within him intensifies from his panic. Lee Shin-hook coughs violently as blood spills from his mouth. The energy fluctuation causes the star Vega to enter a berserk state. The system calculates his survival odds at 1 in 10,000. The young man dies in the dirt. He wonders why he died before destroying the monsters. He looks at the dead body of the man next to him. He hopes the deceased left behind something useful. He notices a strange stigmata on the cold corpse. He places his hand upon the glowing mark. The first enlightenment of the black skies begins to stir. He feels a surge of power that defies his understanding. The black heavens absorb the stigma of the star Vega. The energy of the mark shifts to match the black heavens' power. He experiences a pain like burning hellfire. The stigma of Vega is completely consumed. A system window appears before his eyes. Vega screams that he has stolen her precious mark. She realizes he possesses a stigma she never bestowed upon anyone. She calls him a sinful star that defies all fate. She identifies him as the only one who can save the doomed world. She confirms he is a regressor. The young man struggles to comprehend his new reality. He questions what he is supposed to do with this power. He is the rising star and the only hope for the future. He recalls the memories of his life as Kwon Oh-jin. He remembers the orphanage and the cruel director. The man told him it was easy to fool people. He said one only needed to show them what they wanted to see. The man smiled, asking if Kwon Oh-jin could handle the deception. The young man smirked and raised his middle finger. 8-year-old Kwon Oh-jin endured a childhood of constant abuse. The director beat him for his defiance. The man asked again about the location of their secret shelter. The boy flipped him off and claimed it was a wonderful place. The director grew angry and threatened him with death. A girl stepped forward and struck the man in his weak spot. The bald director collapsed to the floor in agony. The girl grabbed Kwon Oh-jin by the hand. She told him they were leaving this place forever. The director shouted for them to stop. Sun-hun turned to ask if Kwon Oh-jin was feeling okay. The girl acted as his only source of strength in that hell. The boy lied to the adults, calling the director a wonderful man. He told them the food was always plentiful. He watched the director try to hide his tracks. Kwon Oh-jin promised himself he would never die in such a pathetic way. That was when the gates first opened on Earth. Monsters poured out, creatures the world had never seen. The constellations arrived to grant their zodiac powers. The awakened began to harvest the stigmata of the gods. Kwon Oh-jin deceived these metal people to survive. He profited from their war because it was the easiest path. He told his colleagues they were doing excellent work. He asked if they would join him for the next gate. He clung to stronger people like a desperate leech. He reaped the rewards of his scams while others died. He pretended to be a high-ranking hero to lead teams. He stole the best loot and fled whenever things turned sour. He planned another scam just like all the others. Lee Shin-hook, the vessel of Pixis, asks if he is a disciple of Aquarius. Kwon Oh-jin replies that there is no reason for such surprise. He knows he is interacting with one of the 12 constellations. Kwon Oh-jin stands before his new companion. He maintains his ruse as a simple, low-level hunter. Lee Shin-hook introduces himself while eyeing the stranger. He questions why a novice like Kwon Oh-jin seeks a partnership. Kwon Oh-jin feigns a nervous laugh to hide his true intent. He claims his stigma control remains clumsy after a year of awakening. He holds up his hand to display a flickering mark. It glows with the deceptive shape of a sword. He forged this fake stigma himself during years of grifting. Lee Shin-hook nods, seemingly satisfied by the explanation. The two men step toward the shimmering dungeon gate. Kwon Ojin notes the fierce competition for loot in these low-rank zones. He insists they must move with extreme caution. They cross the threshold into the dark enclosed portal. Monsters materialize from the shadows, growling at the intruders. Kwon Ojin activates a minor buff to test his companion. He summons a faint shimmering light to illuminate the chamber. He scatters glass and fluorescent powder into the stagnant air. The air sparkles as the Aquarius-style effect takes hold. Lee Shin-hook feels his body heat rise with the artificial energy. He thanks his partner for the boost to his physical state. He lunges forward to strike at the encroaching beasts. Kwon Ojin watches him with a calculating, narrow gaze. He notes the mirror crystals embedded in the monster's hide. He realizes the potential value of the loot is immense. He calculates a profit of 300,000 coins. The greed for the crystals burns in his mind. He ignores the sudden, unnatural silence falling over the room. A massive wave of monsters surges from the surrounding darkness. Lee Shin-hook shouts that they must retreat immediately. Kwon Ojin hesitates, shocked by the sheer number of enemies. They turn to flee toward a more defensible position. The monsters move with terrifying, unnatural speed. Lee Shin-hook glances back at his companion with a strange expression. He suddenly pivots and kicks Kwon Ojin directly in the face. The blow sends the con artist sprawling into the dirt. Lee Shin-hook apologizes quickly while continuing his frantic escape. Kwon Ojin curses the betrayal from the dusty floor. He watches his partner sprint away to save himself. Lee Shin-hook stops abruptly as his stomach begins to glow. His body trembles under the weight of an unseen force. Kwon Ojin stares, confused by the sudden transformation. A strange, unfamiliar stigma ignites on the man's chest. It burns with the signature of the constellation Lyra. A divine presence manifests in the center of the room. A goddess descends, her form radiating cold, celestial light. Kwon Ojin realizes the man before him is a regressor. He knows the monsters will kill him in minutes. He focuses on the glowing mark on the fallen man's body. He reaches out and touches the fading, dying hero. The power of the black sky surges through his own veins. He absorbs the stigma of the deceased Lee Shin-hook. The mark of Lyra merges into his own dark essence. The goddess stares at the young man with piercing eyes. She asks if he is a regressor who has defied time. Kwon Ojin struggles to understand the nature of the black sky. He knows nothing of the goddess standing before him. He decides to gamble his life on a single desperate lie. He nods slowly and claims the title of regressor. The goddess accepts his words as absolute truth. She speaks of his future as if it were already written. She notes the monsters are currently obstructing their path. She demands a display of the sinful star's true power. Kwon Ojin rises to his feet and draws his weapon. He feels a surge of unknown strength flooding his muscles. His body moves with a lightness he never possessed before. He strikes the first monster with a fluid, lethal motion. The creature falls, sliced apart by his sudden skill. He realizes he has acquired the 4th-level Pixis spear art. He wonders if these are memories of a future life. He fights with a precision that defies his low-level status. The monsters are wiped out in a matter of seconds. The goddess watches him, her expression shifting to surprise. She asks why he refused to use his stigma during the fight. She suggests his body is like a child learning to walk. Kwon Ojin agrees, playing the part of the struggling infant. The goddess smiles and offers him her divine blessing. She invokes the name of the constellation Vega. Her touch amplifies the power of the Lyra stigma. A new wave of monsters crashes into the chamber. Kwon Ojin activates level 1 Blue Thunder. A single strike clears the room of every enemy. He realizes he has surpassed the limits of his current star. He wonders if this is the legendary Weaver star. He stands before the goddess, trembling in her presence. He knows Vega is a supreme being of the cosmos. He fears she will see through his elaborate deception. He decides to double down on his manufactured connection. He reaches for her hand with a look of feigned relief. He claims he is Kwon Ojin and he has missed her. The goddess tilts her head, intrigued by his boldness. She asks about the nature of their bond in the future. Kwon Ojin realizes his lie has hooked the divine entity. He prepares his next words to cement his false narrative. The goddess Vega watches the young man with a calm, piercing gaze. She speaks of the impending end, warning that the darkness of the black sky will eventually swallow all constellations. Kwanojin nods, feigning deep understanding of the cosmic catastrophe. He asks if she truly means the black sky will destroy everything. The goddess confirms that without intervention, the world is destined for absolute ruin. Kwanojin realizes with a jolt that his own mysterious ability is the source of this threat. He wonders if he is truly the one destined to bring about the end of the world. He vows to the goddess that he will protect her from the encroaching void. He swears that the black skies will never claim her light. Vega smiles, labeling the young man a rising star who dares to challenge fate. She formally appoints him as her chosen apostle. The black heavens begin to absorb the lingering mana from the fallen hero's stigmata. The conditions for the black heavens to fully flourish are finally met. Vega turns her attention to the cooling corpse of Lee Shin-huk. She questions the identity of the dead boy with a curious tilt of her head. She remarks that the youth acted with the desperate resolve of a true regressor. She declares that only he possessed the will to prevent such future atrocities. The goddess apologizes, noting that the restrictions of the divine commandments are taking effect. She admits that blessing him earlier was a direct violation of her own rules. She explains that she cannot interfere further in the affairs of the mortal realm. Vega instructs the young man to visit her sanctuary in exactly 1 week. She vanishes into a shimmering trail of starlight, leaving the chamber silent. Kwanojin stands alone, his mind reeling from the weight of his deception. He stares at the stigma on his own chest, still stunned by the power of the northern constellation. He looks down at the body of Lee Shin-huk, acknowledging the man who inadvertently changed his life. He leaves the dungeon and orders 2 large meals from a nearby takeout stand. The cost of the burgers feels unusually high, but he pays without hesitation. He walks into his small, cramped apartment and announces his return. A girl lies on the bed, her eyes clouded and vacant. This is Sun Ha-yoon, the only person left from his days at the orphanage. She complains that he is late and demands he treat her to a cigarette. Kwanojin scolds her for speaking such nonsense the moment he arrives. Sun Ha-yoon retorts that he should show more respect to his older sister. She reminds him that she is 2 years his senior. Kwanojin sets the burgers down, hoping to distract her with the food. Sun Ha-yoon is a bearer of a stigma, but her legs are broken and she is blind. He remains her sole caretaker, just as he has been since their childhood. She takes a bite of the burger, admitting the flavor is surprisingly good. Kwanojin clarifies that he bought it from a restaurant, not a cheap street vendor. He mentions that he has finally earned enough money to afford real food. He hides his mounting savings, waiting for a worthy investment to appear. He notices a smear of sauce on her lip, but decides not to mention it. Sun Ha-yoon snaps at him, demanding to know exactly where the mess is. He tells her to just keep eating and stop worrying about the details. He retreats to his room to study his list of innate abilities. He is certain there is a hidden connection between his black heavens and the nature of regression. If he truly brings ruin to the world, he must find a way to stop it. He realizes he is not a regressor, but an outsider masquerading as one. He needs to maintain this lie to remain above suspicion. He plans to raise his liar level and reach the top 2 within a week. He feels the mana from his new stigma surging through his veins. He prepares to head to the gates again tomorrow morning. A notification pings on his smartphone, alerting him to an outbreak of anomalies. The news warns of dangerous mutants appearing near the local gates. He knows that ants typically travel in large, predictable swarms. These mutants have evolved too quickly, growing far stronger than their natural counterparts. They are monsters that a 1-star stigmatist has no hope of defeating. He decides that his target for the next hunt is already set. He arrives at the forest to find a crowd of hunters gathering near the gate. A girl approaches him, claiming she is a 2-star stigmatist and asking him to join her team. He ignores her, choosing to act alone to keep the loot for himself. He grips his spear tightly and marches into the dark thicket of the forest. He spots a massive ant scurrying across the forest floor. He lunges, driving his weapon deep into the creature's shell. He realizes his physical strength is far greater than it was at level 1. He pries a glowing mutant crystal from the monster's carcass. He notes the crystal is worth nearly 800,000 coins. He hears a low, menacing growl from the shadows behind him. A giant mutant ant lunges, drawn by the scent of the previous kill. Kwanojin remains calm, sensing the beast's lack of fear. He swings his spear, activating the first level of his lightning strike. The weapon connects, slicing through the mutant's armored hide. The creature collapses, destroyed by the sheer force of his blow. He checks his status and sees his liar stigma has reached the 2nd level. He is surprised by how quickly his power is growing. He gathers the crystals and prepares to leave the danger zone. 3 strangers emerge from the brush, blocking his path. One of them sneers, asking if the boy really managed to kill a mutant alone. They identify themselves as 3rd-level disciples of the Veneti staff. Kwon Oh-jin knows these high-level students have no reason to be at such a low-rank gate. He realizes they are nothing more than common thieves hunting for easy loot. One of the men complains that he let the mutants slip away earlier. Kwon Oh-jin drops to his knees, feigning terror and begging for mercy. He begins to cry, offering to hand over his crystals to appease them. The stranger smiles, pleased by the boy's apparent cowardice. The men step aside to discuss how to divide the spoils. Kwon Oh-jin lunges, thrusting his spear through the back of the nearest thief. The man falls, his body skewered by the sudden lethal strike. Kwon Oh-jin laughs, revealing his true intent to the remaining survivor. The last thief draws his weapon, shouting that the boy has lost his mind. Kwon Oh-jin dodges the frantic attack with fluid, practiced ease. The attacker realizes with horror that the boy was hiding his true strength all along. The defeated attacker crumbles to the forest floor. Kwon Oh-jin stands over the body, catching his breath. He notes the silence returning to the dark woods. The young man returns to the blood-stained grass to gather his crystals. He observes the black skies pulsating with a faint rhythmic glow. He suspects the stigma grows stronger by consuming the essence of others. He pauses, glancing around to ensure he remains unobserved. He keeps a wary eye out for the watchful gaze of Vega. Kwon Oh-jin kneels and presses his palm against the fallen man's stigma. A surge of dark energy flares between their skin. The black skies hunger, siphoning the stolen Veneti power into his own. The 2nd level of his stigma finally awakens. Sudden, jagged bolts of lightning arc across his skin. His entire body convulses as the raw energy courses through his veins. The world fades into a blur of white light. He opens his eyes to the sterile, flickering glow of a hospital room. A man looms over his bed, observing his slow recovery. Kwon Oh-jin realizes he has been unconscious for 2 long weeks. He wonders if the visions were merely the echoes of Lee Shin-huk's memories. The man asks why he rushed into the gate without warning his allies. Kwon Oh-jin offers a quiet apology for his reckless haste. He explains that he believed his single star was enough to survive. A young woman enters the room with a stack of urgent reports. She asks if the guildmaster has a moment to discuss the crisis. A new gate has ripped open on 15th Street in Mokdong. She reports that Chong-hun discovered a powerful holy relic inside. Lee Shin-huk's consciousness slips away as the protagonist struggles to remain awake. Kwon Oh-jin realizes he has successfully inherited a fragment of the past. The Pixis spear skill rises to the 5th level of mastery. He understands that each spark of enlightenment unlocks more of the dead man's life. Holy relics act as anchors for the power of the distant stars. Some artifacts bridge the immense chasm between the 1st and 2nd star ranks. He calculates that the Mokdong relic will manifest in exactly 8 days. He considers the tactical value of this hidden knowledge. He asks the manager for a fair estimate on his mutant crystals. The offered price is stingy, but he accepts the coins without protest. The manager asks which constellation grants him his current power. Kwon Oh-jin calmly replies that his patron is Lyra. The manager's face turns pale as she asks him to repeat the name. He spells it out slowly, watching her visible panic. She urges him to move quickly, her hands trembling with nerves. He expected this reaction to the name of a fallen star. He retreats to the quiet sanctuary of the VIP lounge. He finds a stranger already sitting inside the private room. Kwon Oh-jin sizes the man up with a single sharp glance. The stranger snaps at him, demanding to know why he is staring. He assumes this arrogant boy is here for the registration exam. Kwon Oh-jin notices a spread of gourmet food left on the table. He remembers his days as a con artist, starving and desperate. He realizes these expensive desserts are free for any VIP guest. He piles the remaining food into his bag for Son Ha-yoon. The stranger sneers, calling him a beggar and a homeless wanderer. Kwon Oh-jin ignores the insult, focused on packing the treats. The stranger complains about the loud sound of his chewing. Kwon Oh-jin remarks that the boy is certainly full of youthful energy. He notes that only the young can afford to act without considering the cost. The stranger demands to know if he has completely lost his mind. Kwon Ojin asks if the boy truly knows who he is facing. He mentions that he has been inactive for far too long. The stranger shifts in his seat, suddenly struck by his confidence. He wonders if this man is a hidden figure of immense power. He recalls rumors that those who surpass the 9 stars can reclaim their youth. Kwon Ojin asks which guild the boy represents. He adopts a stern, authoritative posture to unnerve his guest. The stranger stammers that he is Park Jun-woo of the Pandanus Guild. Kwon Ojin knows this group is filled with elite scorpion-type awakeners. He asks with a smirk if this is the guild led by Chang Hyang. Park Jun-woo pales, terrified that this stranger knows his master. Kwon Ojin lies, claiming they used to be close friends in the past. He says they spent many nights together in their youth. The young man's face drains of all color. Kwon Ojin says he plans to meet with Chang Hyang very soon. He asks the boy to pass along his warmest regards. Park Jun-woo bows deeply, trembling as he agrees to the request. He asks how he should introduce such an important guest to the master. Kwon Ojin tells him to simply say hello from Kwano. Park Jun-woo apologizes profusely for his earlier arrogance and rudeness. The protagonist thinks that his years of deception have paid off well. He tells the boy that everyone is allowed to make mistakes. Park Jun-woo insists that he has committed an unforgivable error. Kwon Ojin asks if he would be willing to grant him a small favor. The boy agrees, stating it would be a great honor. Park Jun-woo returns moments later with a bag of fresh food. Kwon Ojin praises him, knowing Sun Ha-yoon will love the feast. The boy bows low and beats a hasty retreat from the room. Kwon Ojin realizes the boy was too terrified to even take his exam. He pulls a stolen wallet from his pocket with a satisfied grin. He finds a rare mutant myrrh crystal tucked inside the leather fold. He wonders why a low-level lackey would carry such a valuable treasure. He decides he must investigate the mystery behind the Pandanus Guild. A voice calls out, apologizing for the long delay. Han Jun enters, introducing himself as a captain of the Special Security Management Association. He asks if he is speaking to the bearer of the Lyra stigma. Kwon Ojin confirms his identity with a nod. He judges the captain, deciding he is strong but lacks the reach of Park Jun-woo. He asks what constellation guides the captain's own power. Han Jun replies that he is a 6-star Taurus metahuman. The captain asks again if he truly holds the power of Lyra. Kwon Ojin lifts his shirt, revealing the mark upon his skin. He knows he is the first metahuman to ever carry the Vega stigma. Han Jun asks if he would mind undergoing the registration exam now. The protagonist agrees, sensing the challenge ahead. The captain dons a pair of heavy boxing gloves. Kwon Ojin draws his spear, prepared for the sparring match. He asks if he can use his weapon instead of fighting barehanded. The captain nods, signaling the start of the test. Kwon Ojin wonders if his unique stigma can bridge the 4-star gap. He charges forward, eager to test his limits against a zodiac bearer. He lunges with the spear, but Han Jun deflects the strike easily. The captain is stunned by the raw speed of a 2-star awakener. Han Jun launches a swift counterattack that forces him back. Kwon Ojin feels the overwhelming weight of the captain's strength. The captain rushes in, asking if he is hurt from the exchange. Kwon Ojin shakes his head and readies his spear for another strike. He realizes this opponent is leagues above his previous enemies. Ordinary attacks will not be enough to break his defense. He lunges again, aiming for a gap in the captain's guard. Han Jun parries the blow with practiced, effortless grace. Kwon Ojin decides to bait him and use his own momentum against him. He leaps high into the air, gathering all his strength for a final blow. A familiar, burning sensation ignites deep within his chest. His lightning skill levels up as he descends upon the captain. The air crackles with lethal, uncontrolled energy. Kwon Ojin commits to the strike, pouring all his power into the tip. The two warriors close the distance in a blur of motion. He realizes too late that he has unleashed far too much force. The impact sends a shockwave through the room. The captain collapses, knocked unconscious by the sudden, violent blow. A medic rushes toward the fallen captain and shouts for immediate assistance. Kwon Ojin reaches out and accepts a restorative potion offered by a bystander. He tilts the vial back and swallows the liquid to soothe his aching muscles. The protagonist remarks that he sustained no serious injuries during the intense sparring match. He gestures dismissively at the minor scrapes and bruises marring his skin. The team captain sighs with relief and admits he was genuinely worried about the outcome. Kwon Ojin stares at the empty glass bottle and notes its high market value. His opponent offers a sincere apology for pushing the young man beyond his limits. Kwanojin flashes a calm smile and reassures him that he remains in perfect health. He considers the match a success for forcing a 6-star awakened to reveal his stigma. Hanjun watches the boy closely and notes that the Apostle of Vega exceeds all expectations. The captain gestures toward a quiet corner and requests a private conversation. He formally invites the hero to join his guild, promising full support for his growth. Kwanojin tilts his head and wonders if the master truly intends to recruit him. His status as an apostle of the North Star makes him a highly valuable asset. He decides that joining a formal organization would only create unnecessary complications. A life as a freelance mercenary offers the freedom he needs to master his regression. Kwanojin politely declines the offer, citing his preference for independence. Hanjun proposes a compromise where the boy joins the association in name only. He explains that the hero would receive a steady monthly salary without any mandatory work. Kwanojin pauses in surprise, struggling to process the offer of free money. The captain adds that the association would gladly recommend him for profitable freelance jobs. The protagonist realizes he has hit the jackpot with this unexpected arrangement. He imagines a future where he earns a passive income like a wealthy rentier. With the association backing him, he would keep all proceeds from his own assignments. Kwanojin adopts a charismatic posture and decides to play hard to get. He replies that he needs time to consider such a significant life decision. He reminds himself that he lived his previous life like a dog and refuses to repeat that mistake. The protagonist resolves to become a true master of his own destiny. Hanjun notes that the arrangement also includes a full exemption from all taxes. Kwanojin grins and declares that he looks forward to their future collaboration. He remembers Vega's instruction to visit her sanctuary exactly 1 week later. The day arrives, and he makes his final preparations with a steady hand. He stands before the massive gates of the sanctuary and feels a surge of nerves. Crowds of people gather nearby, whispering prayers to the great constellation. They beg for the goddess to bestow her power upon them in these dark times. Kwanojin looks up at the towering gates that stretch toward the clouds. He wonders how many such structures exist across the entire globe. He pushes through the entrance and steps into the heart of the sanctuary. The interior glows with a soft, ethereal light that defies natural physics. A massive tree stands at the center, its branches woven from the shimmering Milky Way. Kwanojin scans the area, searching for the divine presence of Vega. The goddess materializes in the center of the hall, shimmering like a fallen star. The young man bows his head and admits that he missed her presence dearly. He catches himself and apologizes for the slip of the tongue, fearing he sounded disrespectful. He decides to maintain this facade to hide the truth of their shared past. Vega stares at him coldly and reminds him that her faith is not a playground for lovers. Kwanojin notes that she remains as beautiful as his memories once suggested. The goddess warns him that no amount of flattery will earn him special favors. He smiles internally, knowing he has successfully captured her attention. Vega predicts that he will reach the 2-star rank within a single week. Kwanojin claims his rapid progress is simply due to his previous experiences. She demands to hear the details of the future from which he claimed to return. He realizes he is trapped and must invent a story to satisfy her curiosity. He speaks of a creature known as the Heavenly Demon, a ruler of the black sky. He constructs the lie on the spot, describing a shadow that hides its own identity. Vega tilts her head and asks if such a demon could truly conquer the void. Kwanojin explains that the entity is so well hidden that no one knows its name or face. The goddess appears genuinely surprised that even a regressor lacks this information. She questions why he could not identify the figure despite his return to the past. Kwanojin claims the battle was too chaotic and the opponent turned to dust too quickly. He watches her expression, hoping she accepts his excuse without further scrutiny. Vega concludes that the chaos of the fight must have obscured his vision. She asks if he has a plan to track down the future owner of the black sky. He promises to investigate and claims the threat will manifest in 3 years. He tells himself that 3 years is enough time to grow stronger and maintain his ruse. Kwanojin vows to become the strongest hunter while hunting for clues about the demon. Vega nods, finding his logic sound and his resolve commendable. He announces that a new gate will open in Mokdong in 2 days. He claims he will be the first to enter and secure the hidden relics. He relies on the memories of Lee Shin-huk to make these predictions seem authentic. Vega praises his dedication and refers to him warmly as her son. Kwon Oh-jin blinks in surprise, unused to such intimate language from a divine being. She steps forward and embraces him, her aura warming his heart like a mother's touch. He feels a pang of guilt for deceiving such a kind and caring constellation. He pushes the feeling aside, reminding himself that survival requires these lies. He tells her he is ready to do anything to serve her divine will. Vega flushes slightly and asks how he can speak with such bold affection. He bows low, satisfied that he has successfully navigated the audience. The goddess suddenly changes her mind and declares she will accompany him back to Earth. Kwon Oh-jin freezes, wondering if he heard her request correctly. She explains that she wishes to leave the sanctuary and travel by his side. He protests, citing the strict restrictions placed upon all constellations. Vega laughs and reminds him that a goddess can bypass rules if she truly desires. She begins to shrink until she is small enough to fit in his palm. She hands him a pendant and tells him to wear it to maintain her presence. She promises to walk with him along the darkest paths until their journey ends. Kwon Oh-jin feels a cold sweat break out as he realizes he is now permanently monitored. Sun Ha-yoon stands nearby and stares at the goddess with visible indignation. She wonders who this Vega is and why she is ignoring the laws of heaven. Kwon Oh-jin notes that Ha-yoon seems confused, her words stumbling over one another. He tells her she can drop the formalities and speak to him normally. Ha-yoon ignores him and demands to know why the goddess is standing in their room. Vega ignores the mortal and picks up a hamburger, taking a delicate bite. She admits that she has never tasted human food before, but finds it delicious. Ha-yoon watches in disbelief as the divine being finishes the entire meal. Vega explains that while constellations do not require sustenance, they are not forbidden from eating. She looks at Kwon Oh-jin and notes that he is her first chosen student. Ha-yoon asks why the goddess chose someone as unremarkable as Kwon Oh-jin. Vega smiles and declares that no one in the world is more special than him. She promises that the world will eventually learn of his true power and greatness. The goddess stares at Sun Ha-yoon with a piercing, divine gaze. Vega declares that the girl possesses a hidden, special nature. Sun Ha-yoon blinks in confusion, unaware of her own awakening. Kwon Oh-jin watches the exchange, realizing the goddess sees through mortal veils. The goddess moves to intervene, reaching toward the girl to address a dormant curse. She pauses abruptly, catching her own hand mid-air, as if remembering a restriction. Vega sighs, claiming that any effort to help would be pointless at this moment. The divine being stretches her ethereal limbs, her form beginning to flicker and fade. She warns them that her current manifestation is draining and she must return to slumber. Vega promises to reunite with them when the morning light arrives. The goddess vanishes into thin air, leaving the room in sudden silence. Sun Ha-yoon turns to the young man and demands an explanation for the strange events. Kwon Oh-jin remains quiet, realizing the situation has spiraled beyond his initial predictions. The girl pats the bed beside her and gestures for him to sit down. She leans back, resting her head comfortably against his lap. Sun Ha-yoon smiles, calling him the best pillow she has ever known. She asks with a playful glint in her eyes if he enjoys the proximity. The young man sighs and jokes that she is remarkably heavy for her size. Sun Ha-yoon scowls, clearly offended by his blunt remark. He quickly reassures her that it was only a light-hearted jest. He adds that her head feels as light as an empty vessel. The girl narrows her eyes, recognizing his familiar teasing tone. The young man bids her good night and wishes her pleasant dreams. 2 days pass in a blur of preparation and anticipation. The young man recalls the exact date from Lee Shin-huk's stolen memories. He arrives at the Mokdong gate 3 hours before the scheduled opening. The rift tears open, revealing a swirling vortex of dark energy. He steps through the threshold just as the gate stabilizes. Vega reappears, asking if this is the interior of the rift he described. Kwon Oh-jin notes that she shows no surprise at the gate's timely appearance. He wonders if she truly trusts his predictions or simply accepts his role as a regressor. The goddess looks slightly flustered by the sudden transition. He decides to exploit her hesitation to deepen his cover story. The young man scans the dark cavern, wondering if he can clear the gate alone. He feels a nervous tremor, unsure of the local monster's combat ratings. He checks his inventory, ensuring his rare, expensive potions remain secure. His primary objective is to secure the Aquarius, a rare and valuable resource. He plans to craft and sell high-end potions to fund his rise to power. Suddenly, thick tentacles thrash in the darkness ahead. A monstrous creature pulls itself from the shadows, its skin glistening with slime. Vega observes the beast, describing it as a truly unpleasant entity. She questions if all gates are infested with such grotesque life forms. The young man wonders how long the creature has been tracking their movements. He decides to engage the monster while the goddess watches his performance. He lunges forward, his blade carving through the creature's thick hide. The monster explodes into a shower of black, viscous gore. The young man wipes the residue from his face, muttering about the disgusting mess. He realizes that the explosions from the dying monsters are hindering his mobility. Combat becomes significantly more dangerous than he had anticipated. He decides to utilize the ranged combat skill he mastered in his previous life. A surge of energy gathers as he activates his lightning attack. Vega watches in awe as a spear of pure electricity manifests in his hand. She recognizes the technique as a high-level skill of the Vega star stigma. The young man grins, satisfied that he successfully executed the forbidden technique. He had previously only managed this feat while under a divine blessing. The goddess is stunned, having witnessed the mastery with her own eyes. She expected him to learn quickly, but not with such terrifying efficiency. The lightning spear crackles, though he still lacks total control over the form. Vega offers to teach him more advanced techniques, assuming he already knows them. Quan Ojin shakes his head, admitting he has gaps in his memories. He explains that certain parts of his past feel like a film with missing frames. The goddess frowns, noting that the Star of Oaths should not cause memory loss. She finds his explanation highly suspicious and unusual. The young man suggests that a transcendent power might have tampered with his mind. He hopes this theory will satisfy her curiosity for the time being. Vega dismisses his theory, claiming such interference is impossible. He counters by saying he remembers what is truly important, so the gaps do not matter. The goddess asks what he considers to be truly important. He replies that his memories of her are the only things that truly matter. Vega flushes with outrage, calling his words shameful and trivial. He knows she is vulnerable to such bold, flattering declarations. The goddess suddenly goes rigid, sensing an ominous energy radiating through the dungeon. She struggles to articulate the source of her growing premonition. The young man stoops down to pick up a mutated black myrrh crystal. He notes that mutations are becoming far too frequent in this region. The frequency of these anomalies suggests a deeper rot within the dungeon. Vega stares at the black crystal, visibly confused by its corrupted state. The young man decides to push deeper into the passage to investigate. Something is occurring that even the constellations fail to understand. He wonders what dark force created these blackened crystals. Vega admits that the feeling of dread has been haunting her for hours. She observes that they seem to be walking in circles. The young man realizes the goddess has noticed his attempt to navigate the labyrinth. He decides to rely on the stigma of the venetic canes he absorbed earlier. He inhales deeply, sensing a faint, rotting scent in the air. He points toward a hidden underground passage where the scent grows stronger. The smell of black slugs intensifies as they move forward. The young man stops abruptly, his eyes widening at the sight ahead. Vega gasps, noting that the sinister energy has reached a fever pitch. A colossal, ancient statue looms in the center of the chamber. Neither the man nor the goddess recognizes the origin of the monument. The protagonist approaches the statue, spotting a cup resting in its hands. He calculates the potential value of the relic, imagining the millions it could fetch. He decides he must acquire the item before any other hunters arrive. A strange, grinding noise echoes through the cavern walls. The goddess warns him that the creatures have returned. The young man stands his ground, prepared for the inevitable ambush. Dozens of black slugs crawl from the cracks, guarding the relic. He vows to destroy them all in a single, decisive strike. However, a massive shadow rises behind the wall of slugs. A new, far more powerful monster towers over the small fry. The protagonist's eyes widen as he measures the creature's overwhelming aura. Vega assumes he had predicted this turn of events. The young man says nothing, allowing her to believe he is in control. The goddess settles back, watching with interest rather than fear. The monster emits a screeching sound and lunges toward him. He realizes he has never faced an opponent of this sheer size. He maintains a facade of confidence, fueled by the sight of the holy relic. The young man refuses to back down, calculating his limited chances of victory. He draws his sidearm, grateful that he brought it for emergencies. A loud shot rings out, the bullet tearing into the monster's flesh. The monster clutches its wound, stumbling back in surprise. He knows he has only one chance to land a finishing blow. The lightning spear technique is too taxing to use repeatedly. He channels every ounce of his remaining strength into his weapon. The spear of lightning strikes the beast, bathing the room in white light. The monster shrieks in agony but remains standing on its feet. The young man leaps into the air, grabbing a hanging rope to stabilize. He realizes his first strike failed to penetrate the vitals. He swings from the rope, positioning himself directly above the monster's head. He triggers a second lightning spear, striking the beast at the base of its skull. The monster loses its balance, crashing face first into the stone floor. The young man lands, his body trembling from extreme exhaustion. He feels his consciousness slipping away as the adrenaline fades. He celebrates his victory, having defeated a monster he never faced before. Vega screams a warning, her voice echoing with sudden panic. Green, slime-covered tentacles lash out from the monster's dying body. The appendages reach toward the young man, aiming for his heart. The goddess flies down, checking to see if he is still alive. The young man struggles to his feet, staring at the still-moving creature. The monster's form begins to twist, becoming even more terrifying than before. He realizes he has no other choice but to call upon divine aid. He asks the goddess for her blessing to finish the fight. Vega cannot refuse his desperate plea and begins the transfer. A golden light envelops him as the blessing of the stars takes hold. The young man surged forward, his speed enhanced by the sudden flare of the liar stigma. He felt the power straining his muscles as he closed the distance to the mutated monster. Blue electricity crackled along his weapon, sparking against the creature's hide. Each strike carved deep, smoking furrows into the beast's regenerating flesh. He noticed his mana reserves draining, but he ignored the warning signs. The infinite well of the system's current state allowed him to press his advantage. Kwano Jin believed victory was within his reach if he pushed just a bit harder. Suddenly, Vega screamed for him to stop, her voice echoing with urgent finality. The goddess realized the limit of his physical vessel had been reached. A sharp, stabbing pain erupted in his chest, forcing him to drop his guard. He wondered why his stigma burned with such sudden, agonizing intensity. The liar stigma glowed on his skin, its power jumping to a 3-star rank. Vega watched in awe, noting that not even a month had passed since his last upgrade. She whispered that raising the North Star stigma was far more difficult than any ordinary rank. The goddess leaned over the fallen young man, urging him to return to consciousness. His eyes fluttered open as he stared up at the ceiling, questioning if this was merely a dream. Vega smiled brightly, telling him that he had finally rejoined the waking world. He realized his head was resting comfortably on the goddess's lap. The sight of the goddess at her normal, human-sized stature surprised him. She commanded him not to move, insisting he needed more time to stabilize. Vega noted that he had pushed himself to the absolute brink of collapse. He remembered the fight fading into darkness as his exhaustion took hold. The goddess lectured him on the importance of self-preservation, even for a regressor. Kwano Jin nodded weakly, promising to keep her advice in mind for the future. He thought she sounded remarkably like a concerned mother, despite her divine status. Noticing the faint flicker of annoyance on her face, he asked if something was bothering her. Vega looked away, clearly embarrassed by the intimate nature of the situation. She reminded him that he had recently addressed her by her name, breaking the formal barrier. The goddess admitted that she was not scolding him, but rather acknowledging their newfound closeness. Kwano Jin felt a wave of awkwardness and began to offer frantic, mumbled excuses. He claimed he was still delirious from the after-effects of the battle. Vega insisted that he continue to address her informally, just as he had before. He had no choice but to agree, bowing his head in quiet submission. The goddess trembled as a veil of lightning flickered around her form. She warned him that the dungeon's divine restrictions were taking effect once again. Kwano Jin apologized, blaming his own recklessness for pushing the stigma too far. Vega told him not to apologize, as the monster had been a 5-star threat. He thanked her for her guidance, then asked how she had managed to heal him so quickly. A sense of light, revitalizing energy coursed through his limbs. He noticed all the expensive potion vials lying empty on the stone floor. His heart sank as he realized the small fortune he had just consumed in seconds. Vega smiled, confirming she had used them all to wake him up as fast as possible. He asked why she had used the entire supply at once, wincing at the financial loss. The goddess asked if he was truly that moved, watching him struggle with his internal grief. He begged her to stop talking, his frustration mounting with every word. He asked how she had managed to force the medicine down his throat while he was unconscious. Vega's face turned bright red as she looked away, refusing to discuss the matter further. She announced that it was time for her to depart, promising they would speak again soon. Her necklace flashed with a blinding, ethereal light before she vanished into thin air. Kwano-jin stood alone in the chamber, wondering why she had left so abruptly. He decided to focus on his primary objective and began to gather the loot. A golden goblet materialized in his hand, a heavy and ancient-looking sacred relic. He wondered what hidden potential lay dormant within the artifact. Suddenly, a strange, creeping energy began to ripple through the cavern walls. The dark sky above him shifted, greedily absorbing the power of the relic. He watched in shock as the relic's holy aura was consumed by his own shadow ability. The black sky evolved, its power growing exponentially from the stolen energy. He had not known that his black sky could drain power from sacred objects. The massive, overwhelming aura he had sensed moments ago suddenly vanished. Kwano-jin threw a tantrum, lamenting the wasted effort he had spent on the goblet. Distantly, he heard the sound of footsteps and voices echoing through the passage. A stranger stepped into the light, expressing surprise that someone had reached the relic first. The protagonist tightened his grip on his spear, preparing for a potential conflict. The man declared that his group desperately needed the item held in the young man's hands. Kwano-jin asked if they intended to purchase the relic from him. He decided to play the part of a merchant to trick the suspicious newcomers. He remarked that such a powerful item clearly did not suit his current skill level. He added that his own life was far more valuable than any piece of ancient metal. The stranger chuckled, insisting that they had no intention of harming him. He apologized for their suspicious appearance, claiming it was just the guildmaster's preference. Kwano-jin smiled, acting as though he had been unnecessarily tense. However, he sensed a palpable, murderous intent emanating from the man's eyes. He realized these scoundrels possessed the same dark star power as the relic. The stranger offered him a large crystal of myrrh as payment for the trade. Kwano-jin recognized the item's value, noting it was worth at least 300 million. They shook hands, both men thanking each other for the successful deal. The protagonist chuckled to himself, feeling like he had just hit the jackpot. He knew the relic was essentially a hollow tin can after the black sky finished with it. He remained on his guard, sensing that a dark secret lay beneath their polite facade. According to the records of Lee Shin-huk, the relic was not supposed to appear for 6 days. He wondered if the future had truly changed, or if these people were orchestrating the timeline. The strangers turned and walked away into the shadows of the dungeon. One of the followers asked Eugene why he had allowed the young man to live. Eugene replied that it was unnecessary to leave a trail that other awakened hunters would follow. He expressed his irritation at having to explain every minor tactical decision. The leader stood tall, declaring that the age of the stars was finally coming to an end. He proclaimed that the dark stars would soon rule over the heavens themselves. He promised that all the arrogant, light-aligned stars would pay for their sins. The followers bowed, chanting praises and blessings to the dark star community. Eugene gestured to a replacement relic, placing the fake in the exact spot of the original. He ordered his assistant to return and eliminate the young man they had just met. Kwano-jin watched from the shadows, now certain that the future had been tampered with. He realized the relic found by Liu Huk's guild had been swapped by this illegal society. He understood now why the assistant had mentioned strange occurrences in the past. The Dark Star Society was a dangerous, shadow-dwelling organization. He looked at the fake relic in his hand and wondered if it held any value. There was no reaction from the black sky, confirming the item was a worthless decoy. He felt satisfied, having secured both the valuable myrrh crystal and the truth. He was now one step closer to his ultimate goal of changing his fate. The enforcer returned to the chamber, his eyes darting across the empty space. He could not find a single trace of the young man he had been sent to kill. The enforcer grew frantic, fearing the consequences of failing his leader. He did not see Kwano-jin stepping silently out of the darkness behind him. The enforcer shouted into the empty air, demanding to know where the target had gone. Kwano-jin pressed the tip of his spear against the man's spine. He whispered that he was standing right there, suggesting the man should be more observant. The protagonist stated that the roles had reversed, and he was now the one asking questions. The beaten guild representative fell to his knees, begging for mercy. Kwano-jin demanded the full truth, promising that survival depended on his cooperation. A massive bird circled the dark forest canopy. It began a slow descent toward a solitary building. The owl landed and perched on an old man's shoulder. This was Chen Yun, the 6th-ranked king of owls. Eugene bowed before the elder and presented his findings. The old man nodded in acknowledgement of the tribute. Other hooded followers emerged from the surrounding shadows. Chen Yun declared that the destined moment had arrived. A glowing magic circle pulsed in the center of the clearing. The old man placed the sacred relic inside the shimmering ring. Eugene stood near the circle and gestured to the night sky. He proclaimed that the darkness would soon be filled with stars. The cultists watched the relic, waiting for a divine reaction. The relic remained completely dormant in the center of the circle. Nothing supernatural manifested within the glowing lines. Eugene turned pale as indignation flickered across his face. The old man remained silent, his expression as gloomy as a cloud. Kwano-jin watched the scene from his hidden vantage point. He turned his attention to the captive kneeling before him. The prisoner explained that the organization served dark star constellations. Kwano-jin demanded to know the origin of such beings. The prisoner described a time when stars were swallowed by darkness. These dark constellations were born from that ancient void. Kwano-jin narrowed his eyes, frustrated by the vague explanation. The prisoner confessed he knew nothing beyond those legends. Kwano-jin asked for the location of their primary base. The man trembled and pointed toward the summit of Mount Baigan. He revealed that a branch operated out of an abandoned observatory. 50 members occupied the basement of that mountain structure. Kwano-jin pressed for the location of the main headquarters. The captive shook his head, claiming only branch leaders possessed that knowledge. Kwano-jin considered the hierarchy, finding the secrecy logical. He questioned why the man served such a suspicious group. The prisoner lowered his head and touched his glowing stigmata. He explained that Eugene had bestowed these marks upon them. Kwano-jin paused, wondering how a human could grant such power. The realization dawned that the cultists used marks as a lure. Kwano-jin decided that this interrogation had served its purpose. The captive began to weep, pleading for his life. He spoke of a 9-year-old daughter named Cho Yun-ren. He claimed he joined the community only to save her. Kwano-jin considered the harsh reality of an orphaned child. He asked the man to recite details about his daughter. The prisoner provided the information, though he seemed confused. Kwano-jin commanded him to repeat the details in reverse. The man stumbled, unable to recall the facts in order. Kwano-jin confirmed that the man had been lying. He asked one final time for the branch location. The prisoner repeated the address at Mount Baigan. Kwano-jin struck the man, ending his life instantly. The interrogation concluded with the villain's demise. Kwano-jin realized the organization was far more dangerous than expected. He reached out and touched the dead man's dark star stigma. A black mist erupted and swallowed the owl mark. He wondered what new power this stolen stigma would grant. He calculated the strength of the 50 members at the branch. Preparation was essential before he could stage an assault. Eugene continued to fiddle with the useless relic in the circle. Chen Yun asked why the ritual had failed so miserably. Eugene panicked, fearing the other performers would mock their order. The old man released an energy beam that grazed Eugene's neck. A thin line of blood appeared on the leader's skin. Chen Yun warned Eugene not to disappoint him again. The elder turned away, losing interest in the failed display. Eugene shouted, demanding to know the status of the mercenary. He was informed that contact with the scout had been lost. Eugene grew frantic, threatening to restore order through violence. A week passed since the return from the Mactan Gate. Kwano-jin remained home, focusing on his internal training. He practiced controlling the mana surging through his 3rd star. The Lyra stigma proved more potent than he had imagined. It surpassed the combat power of the Taurus star. It outpaced the speed of the lethal Scorpio star. No other 3-star awakened could hope to match him. He practiced with a wooden spear, though lightning skills felt weak. Sun Heian approached him after his long, intense workout. She offered him a relaxing massage to soothe his muscles. Kwon-oh-jin accepted, surprised by her sudden initiative. He felt the tension leave his body under her skilled touch. He joked that he might die from such extreme comfort. Sun Haein smiled, applying more pressure to his shoulders. Kwon-oh-jin jumped, complaining that she was far too strong. She laughed, telling him he was acting like a child. Suddenly, her expression darkened and she looked away. She had once been a 7-star awakened before her injury. Kwon-oh-jin felt a pang of guilt for his careless words. He asked how much capital he had accumulated thus far. She noted that time was running out for his goal. He remained silent, focused on the 10 billion mark. The phone rang, breaking the heavy silence of the room. He stepped outside to answer the urgent assignment request. The caller offered 2 billion for a high-priority quest. Kwon-oh-jin hesitated, fearing the Dark Star community. He finally agreed, deciding he needed the funds immediately. He arrived at the association to discuss the mission. He showed the captain an image of the owl stigma. The officer checked his database and identified the mark. He explained that it was a forgotten stigma from 8 years ago. Records of these constellations had vanished over time. Kwon-oh-jin noted the age of the Dark Star community. It was not a new threat, but an ancient organization. The captain revealed that the client was the Valhalla Guild. He described them as a group of elite, talented warriors. Their leader was a candidate for the 7 stars. Kwon-oh-jin wondered if a new powerhouse was emerging. The mission required finding a missing person in a gate. He realized the high reward reflected the extreme danger. He accepted the contract, believing he could finish in 3 days. The captain showed him a photo of Lee Shin-huk. Kwon-oh-jin recognized the man from his own past. He knew the young man was a regressor like himself. He realized the guild was searching for a dead man. The captain pointed to the photograph of Lee Shin-huk. Kwon-oh-jin stared at the image of the young man. He recognized the face of a fellow regressor from his past. The captain confirmed that Lee Shin-huk was the brother of the Valhalla Guild leader. Kwon-oh-jin processed the connection between the two men. The guild was hunting for a man who should have been dead. The captain asked if he would accept the high-stakes mission. Kwon-oh-jin felt the weight of the conflicting information. His head throbbed from the ongoing Dark Star investigation. Lee Shin-huk and his brother were now central to the chaos. He saw an opening to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Kwon-oh-jin shook his head and refused the assignment. Jun blinked in shock at the sudden rejection. He noted that Kwon-oh-jin rarely turned down a 2 billion reward. Kwon-oh-jin claimed he lacked the talent for tracking people. Jun sighed but mentioned the guild's strong ties to the association. He suggested that building a rapport with Valhalla would be beneficial. Kwon-oh-jin insisted that other opportunities would inevitably present themselves. He requested the private phone number of the guild commander instead. Kwon-oh-jin decided that the hunt had officially begun. He arrived at the recently opened Mokdong Gate. The area remained eerily empty of other players. He wondered if he would have to return tomorrow. He hoped to resolve the matter before Vega awoke from her rest. A sudden chill of dark mana rippled through the air. The intent to destroy was thick and suffocating. Kwon-oh-jin spun around and locked eyes with a stranger. A man in a hat stood watching him with intense hatred. Kwon-oh-jin turned his back and sprinted into the distance. The stranger shouted a command and gave chase. The man in the hat rounded a corner but lost sight of his quarry. He scanned the alleyway, confused by the sudden disappearance. Kwon-oh-jin emerged from the shadows behind him. He remarked that the man was surprisingly persistent. He admitted that he had lured the stranger here on purpose. The man in the hat pulled off his headgear. He asked if the boy really thought he had escaped. The stranger waved his hand in a wide arc. Several razor-sharp bird feathers whistled through the air. Kwon-oh-jin vaulted into the air to dodge the lethal projectiles. He identified the attack as a technique of the strict stigma. He declared that he now understood the mark's true function. He raised his hand and summoned a spear of crackling lightning. The strike connected and brought the opponent to his knees. Kwon-oh-jin stood over the defeated man. He acknowledged that the minion had been a formidable test. He realized that Balife would be exponentially stronger. He reached into the stranger's pocket and pulled out a smartphone. He took a clear photo of the discarded lightning spear. He planned to use this image as the ultimate bait. He dialed a number and waited for a response. A secretary named Kim Se-young answered the line. He told her that he had found Lee Shin-huk. He demanded to speak with the guild leader immediately. Kim Se-young burst into the executive office in a panic. Lee Woo-hook looked up from his desk in surprise. She whispered the urgent and confidential news. Lee Woo-hook snatched the phone and demanded proof. Kwon-oh-jin claimed that the brother was being held by force. He sent the photo of the spear to the guild leader's device. Lee Woo-hook stared at the screen and asked for the caller's identity. Kwon-oh-jin told him that his name was Eugene. He watched the incapacitated man on the ground. He decided that it was time to unleash the chaos. He would let the guild tear their own enemies apart. The memory of his childhood flashed through his mind. In his youth, Hun had excelled at every task. His older brother often spoke of how cool Hun seemed. Everything difficult for the brother came easily to the younger. Hun had appeared to be a genuine superhuman. Shin Hun believed his brother was destined for greatness. Then, the era of real superhumans shifted the balance. Shin Hun became an awakened lion of the zodiac signs. No constellation had chosen the younger brother. The shame of being protected by his own sibling became unbearable. Hun consumed himself with his new and bitter self-image. He realized the distance between them far too late. The brothers eventually stopped speaking to one another. The younger brother felt his own inadequacy in his sibling's shadow. Their bond fractured under the weight of pride and jealousy. One day, Shin Young announced that he had finally awakened. He had received the Pixis stigma as his power. Eventually, Hun also gained his own awakening. The younger brother hoped for a return to their former peace. He pointed at the spear and asked about its origin. UK replied that it was a carefully crafted gift. He had spent weeks securing the high-grade myrrh crystal. Hun beamed with delight at the rare green stone. The older brother promised to use the weapon in battle. Kwon-oh-jin waited for the guild leader's reaction. Lee Woo-hook saw the silver blade and the vibrant crystal. He recognized the weapon as a one-of-a-kind artifact. Lee Woo-hook roared into the phone, demanding to know the truth. Kwon-oh-jin calmly repeated that his name was Eugene. He demanded $3 billion in cash by the 25th. He ordered the leader to appear at the Mount Bume Observatory. He insisted that the man come entirely alone. Kwon-oh-jin ended the call and tossed the phone aside. Lee Woo-hook slammed his fist into the mahogany desk. He ordered his assistant to summon every available guild member. Kwon-oh-jin met with the association contact. He handed over a portrait of the man named Eugene. He stated that this was the extent of his information. The contact promised to deliver the file to Valhalla. Kwon-oh-jin expected the guild to be slow to act. He was surprised by the speed of their mobilization. Lee Woo-hook had reacted before the day was even over. The guild leader was desperate to find his brother. The spear served as a perfect, irresistible trap. The contact noted that it was a strange coincidence. The awakened one Kwon-oh-jin had fought was now involved. The guild leader had officially requested military support. Kwon-oh-jin decided he would participate in the operation. He wanted to reach Mount Bume to monitor the outcome. He knew Eugene and Lee Woo-hook were destined to clash. Eugene stood over a bloodied man in the dirt. He warned the victim to remain silent and still. The man gasped that he had found a crucial clue. He claimed to have checked the cable TV records nearby. He had watched the building reserved for association members. He tracked the target back to the Mokdong Gate. The victim wasn't sure if the man belonged to the association. He had waited near the building for hours in the cold. Eugene dismissed the man's rambling as suspicious nonsense. He felt a sudden, sharp sensation in the air. His assistant reported that a collector was approaching. Eugene decided he would handle the intruder himself. He stepped outside into the cool night air. He saw the spear embedded in the ground nearby. He ignored the weapon, focusing on the approaching figure. He wondered if the man was simply lost in the dark. A face full of raw hatred glared from under a hat. Eugene felt a genuine chill crawl down his spine. His assistant shouted that they had found the lost spear. The collector pulled off his hat to reveal his face. Eugene froze as he recognized the Black Lion. It was Lee Woo-hook, the head of the Valhalla Guild. The man was rumored to be the next 7-star ranker. Eugene asked what the guild leader was doing here. Lee Woo-hook stated he had brought the demanded cash. Eugene stood confused by the sudden arrival. Lee Woo-hook drew his shimmering blade from its sheath. He told Eugene to try and take the money by force. Eugene looked around at the growing number of shadows. Unknown people gathered around the building from every side. Lee Woo-hook shouted that he was not falling for a trick. The guild forces closed the perimeter around the kidnapper. Lee Woo-hook lunged forward with a furious downward strike. The blade whistled through the air toward the retreating target. Eugene dodged the blow, his eyes wide with sudden disbelief. The guild leader pressed the attack, demanding the location of his brother. Eugene backed away, his breath hitching in his chest. He wondered why the powerful leader was obsessed with his sibling. Li Wuhuk swung his sword, his face twisted in a mask of rage. The steel crashed against the ground, shattering the pavement into dust. Eugene realized the guild leader was operating under a massive misunderstanding. The kidnapper shouted that there had been a terrible mistake. Li Wuhuk ignored the plea, driving his shoulder into Eugene's ribs. The impact sent Eugene spiraling into the dirt with a thud. Blood bubbled from a jagged wound on Eugene's side. He desperately activated his dark shower of flowers technique. Petals of shadow erupted from his palms to block the incoming sword. Li Wuhuk parried the dark energy with a contemptuous flick of his wrist. Eugene drew his own blade, thrusting it blindly into the air. He vanished in a flash of light, teleporting to safety behind a tree. The wounded man clutched his side, gasping for air in the shadows. He leaned his weight against the rough bark of an oak. His body ached from the toll of the holy relic. Panic flared in his eyes as he considered his failing subordinates. The hideout was compromised, and his men were falling by the hour. He needed an ally, and he needed one immediately. He reached out toward the darkness to summon Ashid Khan. A figure stepped from behind a nearby tree, holding a spear. The man looked down at the bleeding Eugene with a cold smile. Kwano Jin stood motionless, his weapon humming with latent power. Eugene recognized the stranger and understood his trap had snapped shut. Kwano Jin ordered him to stop his pathetic struggle. He struck, his spear point glowing with a sharp, lethal light. Eugene crumpled, his consciousness fading as the light drained away. Kwano Jin stood over the fallen man, his face unreadable. He searched the unconscious target for any scraps of information. He found documents detailing links to a man named Balaif. He also pulled a contact address for Ashid Khan from the victim's pocket. Kwano Jin stood in the silence, weighing the value of his prize. He suspected these people were the architects of the coming catastrophe. The future celestial demon likely emerged from this very organization. He vowed not to let these vermin continue their descent into darkness. He turned his attention back to the unconscious Eugene. The man's potential had exceeded all his previous expectations. Without the Valhalla Guild's distraction, he could never have secured this victory. He wondered if Balaif stood on par with the powerful Big Dipper. He knelt and placed his hand firmly on Eugene's chest. The stigma embedded in the man's skin began to pulse. Glowing crystals materialized in Kwano Jin's palms, hungry for power. He absorbed the stolen stigma into his own black sky energy. The system pinged, confirming the conditions for the Third Enlightenment were met. He read the inscriptions within the stolen Lyra stigma. A vision of a massive, burning monster flooded his mind. He saw Li Xinhyun shouting at his brother to retreat. The older brother charged the beast with a spear in hand. The monster split in two, but a giant slug erupted from the earth. Kwano Jin gasped, his eyes snapping open in the present. The inherited memories of Li Wuhuk faded into the background. His black sky ability evolved, gaining the power of eternal convergence. He tested his new strength, calling upon the strict stigma. Sharp bird feathers manifested in the air, swirling around his body. The sheer power of the skill was overwhelming and raw. He decided to focus his training on the Lyra stigma for now. He stood up, noticing Han Jun approaching from the perimeter. An empty potion vial lay discarded in the dirt near his feet. The association commander asked for a report on the skirmish. He noted that over 10 people had been injured in the fray. Kwano Jin asked where he was, feigning a dazed expression. Han Jun explained that the criminal had been neutralized. Medical teams were already on their way to the scene. Kwano Jin refused treatment, claiming he was perfectly fine. He had inflicted his own wounds to make the scene appear authentic. He spotted Li Wuhuk nearby and walked toward the guild leader. The Black Lion stared at him, his eyes burning with intensity. Li Wuhuk asked if the young man was indeed Kwano Jin. The protagonist confirmed his identity with a curt nod. The guild leader asked if Eugene had confessed anything before dying. Kwano Jin lied, stating the criminal had died without a word. He pointed in a false direction, suggesting where the man had fled. He implied that Li Xinhyun might be found in that area. The guild leader looked away, his expression hardening with renewed purpose. A week passed in the bustling city. Kwano Jin entered the opulent office of the Valhalla Guild. Lee Woo-hook sat behind a massive desk, his posture regal. He apologized for their previous hostile encounter. He invited the young man to sit and discuss their business. Kwon Oh-jin watched the leader, sensing the weight of his grief. Lee Woo-hook stated that he wanted to offer his deepest thanks. Without Kwon Oh-jin, the killer of his brother would have escaped. Assistant Kim Sean placed a heavy briefcase on the desk. The lid clicked open, revealing stacks of crisp 3 billion won bundles. Lee Woo-hook insisted that the reward was entirely deserved. Kwon Oh-jin accepted the payment, though he remarked it was generous. The guild leader admitted he had another motive for the meeting. He had heard that Kwon Oh-jin was a disciple of Polaris. The young man confirmed his connection to the legendary master. Lee Woo-hook revealed his plan to hunt down the Dark Star community. He asked for the disciples' assistance in their total eradication. Kwon Oh-jin viewed this as a perfect opportunity to advance his plans. He handed over the paper containing the details on Ashid Khan. He told Han-jun he would be working with the Valhalla Guild. He requested a special spear made of reinforced silver and myrrh crystals. He described the weapon's need for a conductive fire function. Han-jun smiled, impressed by the technical requirements of the design. He promised to place the order with the association's elite smiths. Kwon Oh-jin calculated the costs, noting the high price of the materials. The association leader offered to cover the bulk of the expense. The path to dismantling the Dark Star organization lay open. Kwon Oh-jin prepared himself for the long war ahead. The association team leader reviewed the project costs with a nod. He complimented the young man on the intense effort put into the recent operation. Kwon Oh-jin struggled to maintain his composure as the final figures were tallied. The team leader advised him to remain calm despite the staggering amounts involved. Kwon Oh-jin insisted that he required the highest quality weapon for his upcoming missions. The association representative agreed to cover the expenses as a gesture of support. The protagonist firmly rejected the offer, stating he would pay for the gear himself. He returned home and announced his financial decision to the empty room. Song Hyeon sat on the edge of the bed, focused entirely on her smartphone. She ignored his entrance and continued listening to music through her earbuds. Kwon Oh-jin approached and asked what could possibly be so captivating on her device. The girl gasped and dropped her phone, startled by his sudden proximity. She explained she was merely listening to a song to pass the time. Kwon Oh-jin arched an eyebrow, surprised that she had been so deeply engrossed. The girl clarified that she was actually reviewing a list of relics for the December auction. She hoped to acquire the Eye of the Demon Dragon during the bidding process. Kwon Oh-jin climbed onto the building's roof to clear his head with some exercise. He balanced his weight perfectly while performing a slow, controlled handstand. His companion soon appeared with the final appraisal of the items from the Mokden Gate. The report confirmed that the recovered item was a rare 3-star relic. Its primary property involved the rapid restoration of depleted mana reserves. The team leader asked if the young man intended to keep the relic for personal use. Kwon Oh-jin requested that it be sold immediately along with the mirror crystals. He handed over the remaining crystals confiscated from the late Eugene. The association leader noted that these items were of the 3rd rank. He calculated the total value, noting the sum was substantial for a single haul. Kwon Oh-jin realized that selling the lot would net him nearly 2 billion coins. He combined this with the reward money provided by the head of the Valhalla Guild. His total wealth grew to 5 billion, bringing him closer to his ultimate goal. He still needed to secure 3 billion more to earn his passage to paradise. Kwon Oh-jin asked the team leader for a map of the city's underground sewer network. He returned to his handstand on the roof, his muscles straining under the tension. The pendant on his chest suddenly pulsed with a soft, ethereal light. A familiar melodic voice echoed in his mind, asking about his progress. Vega materialized before him, her presence shimmering against the night sky. The protagonist greeted the goddess, noting he had been waiting for her return. Vega requested once again that he speak to her with a more casual tone. Kwon Oh-jin summarized the dramatic events of the past 3 weeks for her benefit. Vega observed that the wielder of the Black Sky energy had truly arrived. The young man admitted that his connection to the celestial demon remained a theory. He recalled his past life, where the demon commanded an entire army of shadows. Vega warned him that he had entangled himself with some truly dangerous individuals. She insisted he needed significantly more time to grow into his true power. Kwon Oh-jin declared that he already possessed a plan to confront the Dark Constellation. He admitted he lacked specific knowledge about the era when darkness would swallow the stars. Vega confessed that even she knew little about the origins of those mysterious entities. The protagonist was caught off guard by the limitations of the goddess's knowledge. He realized he would have to extract the truth from the villains of the Dark Star themselves. Vega expressed a desire to see how much he had evolved during their time apart. Kwano Jin stood up and gripped his practice spear with both hands. He ignored the lack of visible changes and prepared to demonstrate his growth. He focused his energy, and the lightning spear skill crackled to life in his grip. Arcs of electricity danced along the shaft, illuminating the rooftop in brilliant blue. Kwano Jin paused, waiting for the goddess to offer her assessment. Vega watched with a skeptical expression, wondering how a regressor mastered such a technique. The young man felt a flicker of doubt, questioning if he had made a tactical error. Vega pointed out that he had successfully focused lightning in 3 distinct points simultaneously. Kwano Jin claimed he had simply attempted the movement and found it effective. The goddess questioned if his memories of the Lyra stigma technique were not supposed to be vague. She concluded that he must be remembering the movements through some form of subconscious intuition. Kwano Jin offered a silent thank you to the goddess for her convenient misinterpretation. He confessed that he was surprised by his own hidden capabilities. Vega grew irritated, questioning why she had not yet successfully forged a true disciple. She began a long explanation regarding the extreme difficulty of mastering the Lyra stigma. Kwano Jin ignored the lecture as his phone began to ring loudly in his pocket. He met the association team leader at the designated drop-off point. The man handed over the new weapon, which exceeded all of the protagonist's expectations. Kwano Jin made a mental note to thank the skilled craftsman for his precision work. Vega suggested that the weapon would be truly terrifying if combined with a shock enchantment. Kwano Jin noted that such an addition was not strictly necessary for his current goals. He activated the bracelet on his wrist and fired a grappling line at the neighboring building. 3 long, hooked strings shot across the gap, anchoring firmly into the concrete. He told Vega to hold on tight as he prepared for a high-speed traversal. The goddess watched with excitement as he utilized the innovative method to swing forward. Kwano Jin realized that while he lacked the power of true flight, he had found a substitute. Vega remarked that if he had already tested the gear, they should return home. The young man disagreed, insisting it was finally time to put his new equipment to the test. He headed toward the capital station with a single-minded focus. He intended to track down a monster to calibrate his movements in a live combat scenario. He stopped at a specialty store to purchase 2 signal flares and 2 smoke grenades. He also picked up 6 blades coated with mirror crystals and a high-intensity flashlight. He grumbled about the exorbitant prices, labeling the shopkeeper a common thief. He successfully negotiated a lower price through sheer persistence and stubbornness. Vega observed that the young man was remarkably determined when it came to saving money. Kwano Jin replied that every coin counted toward his eventual departure from this world. The goddess apologized for her inability to provide him with financial assistance at the moment. The young man reassured her that her presence as a guide was more than enough. He realized that his fortune had only begun to shift after becoming her apostle. With his preparations complete, he descended into the dark, damp maintenance shaft. Vega asked if he was certain about the location of the hidden dungeon. Kwano Jin explained that the area had been destroyed during the last seal-breaking event. He remained confident that they were on the correct path to the hidden monster. The goddess questioned his logic, wondering if he truly believed he could defeat such a beast. He admitted he would likely die in a direct confrontation at his current level. Since the monster remained sealed, he viewed it as nothing more than a giant, immobile target. He lacked the resolve to activate the hound stigma amidst the suffocating stench of the tunnel. Vega sensed a familiar, ominous energy radiating from the depths ahead. Kwano Jin swept his flashlight across the path, noting the map indicated a dead end. He asked if she detected the same energy signature from the previous cave. Vega confirmed the sensation, describing it as a sharp, painful pressure on her spirit. Kwano Jin suspected the influence of the Dark Star was spreading through the tunnels. He noted that myrrh crystals had been appearing with alarming frequency on local mutants. He decided they had to investigate the source of the corruption regardless of the risk. Monsters emerged from the shadows at the end of the tunnel, blocking their path. The protagonist identified them as mutants, though their skin possessed a strange, mutated hue. He declared them a perfect warm-up and charged forward with his spear leveled. He thrust the weapon forward, testing the electrified tip against the lead creature. The spear performed flawlessly, delivering a lethal surge of current to both mutants. They collapsed into the dirt, their bodies twitching from the sudden electrical discharge. A larger group of mutants crawled out from the darkness to replace their fallen kin. Kwano Jin deduced that the first pair had served as nothing more than sacrificial guards. Vega agreed, noting the tactical placement of the defenders. The young man entered the fray, activating the lightning spear to its full capacity. He promised that even if the creatures possessed a scrap of intelligence, it would not save them. He fired his hook strings, using them to pull himself into a perfect striking position. The maneuver allowed him to bypass the defensive line and land a crushing blow. A massive, hulking mutant stepped into the light, dwarfing the others. Kwano Jin recognized the creature as the legendary reptile champion. The young hunter examined the massive reptilian champion blocking the tunnel. He noted that standard grappling strings would be ineffective against such a target. Kwano Jin raised his lightning spear and charged directly at the beast. The electric surge connected perfectly with the creature's hide. The mutant collapsed into the dirt as the current overwhelmed its nervous system. Kwano Jin stood over the fallen monster and claimed the victory was effortless. Vega scanned the area and reminded him to secure the remaining loot. A black mirror crystal materialized in the palm of the young hunter's hand. He stared at the jagged stone and marveled at his growing collection. The goddess asked what he truly knew about these ominous crystals. Kwano Jin admitted he had never seen them during his first life. He theorized a hidden link between the mutants and the Dark Star. Mutants appearing in such high numbers within dungeons was far from natural. He suspected a relic containing dark energy was hidden somewhere within the gates. The prospect of danger bothered him, but the high value of the crystals kept him focused. He spotted a faint glow emanating from the far end of the damp tunnel. Kwano Jin stepped out of the shaft and scanned the vast open chamber. A familiar, terrifying silhouette emerged from the shadows of his past memories. Vega gasped in surprise at the sight of the sealed monster. The young hunter confirmed that this was the beast that leveled the capital station. He observed that the creature was only half the size of the original. The smaller size suggested the interior mirror crystal was equally diminished. Kwano Jin fired his grappling hooks toward the gelatinous mass. The metal barbs sank into the monster's flesh without triggering a response. He chuckled, assuming the immobile carcass would serve as a stress-relieving punching bag. He mentally thanked Lee Shin-huk for providing such a convenient training opportunity. The gelatinous mass suddenly twitched and emitted a low, vibrating hum. Vega pointed at the monster and asked if he had witnessed the movement. Kwano Jin shook his head, dismissing the sight as a trick of the light. A deafening roar erupted from the creature, echoing through the cavern. Goosebumps rose on his skin as the monster began to heave and shift. Kwano Jin stood frozen, wondering how he could possibly defeat such an evolved mutant. He suspected that Lee Shin-huk had lied about the true difficulty of this encounter. The goddess demanded an explanation for the sudden shift in the situation. Kwano Jin masked his panic and told her everything was perfectly under control. He launched himself into the air and latched onto the monster's massive arm. He sprinted up the limb, focusing his eyes on the center of the creature. He leaped into the air and brought his spear down with lethal force. The lightning spear skill crackled as it struck the monster's core. Kwano Jin landed on the ground, confident the creature was finally finished. The monster's fist suddenly slammed shut, trapping the young hunter inside. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a concealed firearm. He fired a shot, forcing the creature to release him from its grip. Kwano Jin hit the stone floor and assessed his dwindling magical reserves. He realized his current output was insufficient to pierce the monster's thick hide. He fired his harpoon into the monster's arm to gain a new angle. He swung his body like a pendulum and vaulted onto the creature's back. He reached the nape of the neck and prepared for a final, concentrated strike. He channeled his physical strength and mana into the spear's shaft. The lightning discharge surged to the 4th level of intensity. Kwano Jin activated the deep discharge skill as the power peaked. The monster thrashed, breaking free of his hold as the battle intensified. A group of civilians huddled in the corner of the cavern in total terror. A young child tripped over his own feet and fell behind the fleeing group. The boy burst into tears, crying out for help as the mutant loomed over him. Kwano Jin sprinted forward and positioned himself between the child and the beast. He braced his feet against the ground to block the monster's path. The onlookers stared in shock at the stranger's sudden act of heroism. Vega ordered the child to run while the young hunter held the line. Kwon Jin ignored the danger, determined to protect the innocent townspeople. He usually avoided strangers, but he knew the goddess was watching his every move. He maintained his heroic posture to keep the goddess's favor. Vega asked if he required her divine blessing to survive the fight. Kwon Jin refused, claiming he had the situation completely handled. He sensed his temporary power boost fading like a flickering mirage. The mutant shrieked in pain as the electrical damage took its toll. He began to anticipate the monster's movements with rhythmic precision. He felt his mana cycling efficiently instead of draining away. The young hunter unleashed the full, unbridled power of his lightning spear. The creature roared, its vitality waning with every passing second of the assault. He activated the deep discharge skill one final time to finish the job. The monster slumped to the ground as its life force finally extinguished. He used his harpoons to hurl massive boulders at the cooling corpse. Vega expressed concern, asking if he had pushed himself too far. Kwon Jin flashed a confident smile and told her not to worry. He reminded her that he had predicted the fight would end quickly. The townspeople rushed forward, showering their savior with praise and gratitude. They snapped photos of the young hunter until he finally retreated from view. He sighed, realizing his plan to remain anonymous had just failed. Reporter Go Guan-hyung pushed through the crowd to reach him. The reporter asked which guild the young hunter was currently representing. Kwon Jin claimed he was a member of the official association. He calculated that a good public image would translate to future trust. The crowd whispered that the association representative was a true hero. Kwon Jin lowered his eyes, acting with practiced, humble modesty. Vega took the stage and announced that her protégé had saved them all. She demanded that the people show their gratitude with tangible financial rewards. Kwon Jin silently signaled for the goddess to stop talking immediately. The civilians opened their wallets, grateful for the chance to pay their savior. The goddess collected a massive sum of money for her charge. Kwon Jin felt satisfied as the coins added up in his inventory. He worried that his life was becoming increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. Junman approached him, noting that the internet was currently buzzing with his name. 16 different guilds had contacted the association regarding his recent performance. 8 guilds had already sent significant donations to the association fund. Junman noted that the secret of his identity was officially out. The squad captain confirmed that they had failed to keep his information private. Kwon Jin shrugged, deciding he could use his status as an apostle to his advantage. Junman mentioned a viral article claiming the hero demanded payment from survivors. The captain praised the move, noting it had gained him a massive fan base. The public was particularly moved by the photos of him saving the child. A journalist had even captured him covering the boy with his own raincoat. Kwon Jin stared at the photo, confused since he never owned a raincoat. He dismissed the image as a piece of sensationalist, melodramatic fiction. The article had successfully turned his tactical decision into a legendary tale. He understood that his reputation was now beyond his control. He adjusted his gear and prepared for his next encounter with the gates. The goddess floated beside him, clearly pleased with the day's earnings. Kwon Jin walked toward the exit, his mind already calculating future profits. The world was changing, and he intended to be at the center of it. Junman scanned the pile of crystals sitting on the table. The captain warned that the market value of mirror crystals had plummeted recently. Mutants had become common, and the once rare dark crystals now flooded the trade. Kwon Jin suspected this shift was linked to the influence of dark constellations. Junman estimated the 2 largest specimens could fetch 400 million coins. Kwon Jin insisted on a rapid sale within the next few days. The captain hesitated, noting the volatility of mutant-sourced materials. Kwon Jin proposed an immediate payout of 300 million. He offered the association the remaining balance once the final sale closed. Junman paused, clearly surprised by the young man's sudden generosity. The captain recalled that Kwon Jin rarely left a single coin on the table. Junman agreed to the terms and promised a transfer by the following day. The captain then reached into a drawer to retrieve a small official folder. He handed Kwon Jin an identification card designating him as an authorized association representative. Kwon Jin noted the weight of the card in his palm. The status granted him the rare authority to conduct formal field investigations. Junman hinted that the association's higher-ups held the young man in high regard. Kwon Jin stepped out of the building and stared up at the afternoon sky. He calculated his current savings at 700 million coins. With the upcoming transfer, he would finally reach his financial goal. One final step remained before he could secure his passage to paradise. A television screen in the lobby displayed a breaking news report. The broadcast highlighted the heroics at the train station the previous afternoon. Sun Ha-yoon watched the screen from her quiet room. She saw the anchors refer to her friend as the Lightning Wolf. The news shifted to the upcoming December auction at the Jonan House. Rare items like the 7-star Blade of Dawn and Twilight were listed. The 6-star relic, the Eye of the Dragon Demon, returned to the block after 15 months. Vega appeared in the doorway, staring at the resting girl. The goddess asked if the young woman had finally awakened from her nap. Sun Ha-yoon assumed the goddess had departed with Kwon Jin hours ago. Vega explained that the young man had simply forgotten his necklace at home. Sun Ha-yoon asked if divine laws prevented goddesses from lingering on Earth. Vega claimed that a few hours of presence caused no harm to the mortal realm. The goddess moved closer, her expression turning uncharacteristically serious. She remarked that her ward's obsession with money seemed far from normal. Vega asked if Sun Ha-yoon understood the motive behind the young man's greed. The girl explained his desperate need to reach paradise. She described the protected zone located on Kangwad Island. The island remained a sanctuary, free from gates, monsters, and chaos. It was a preserved land, untouched by the world's collapse. Kwon Jin saved every coin to purchase a permanent residence permit. Sun Ha-yoon whispered that they planned to live there in peace. Vega looked skeptical, questioning the true existence of such a safe haven. The girl identified the island's ruler as John Sangil. He followed the constellation Ursa Major and led the Favorites of Heaven Guild. Vega asked if Kwon Jin truly believed money could buy him safety. Sun Ha-yoon recounted the young man's childhood dream. He wanted a home where no one could hurt, freeze, or frighten him. She noted that such simple happiness felt like an impossible dream for them. The orphanage director had beaten them daily during their youth. Kwon Jin usually suffered the worst of the physical abuse. Sun Ha-yoon admitted that she had been the director's primary target for years. To distract the man, Kwon Jin once lied about a fire in the kitchen. The director responded to the prank with even greater violence. Vega asked if the boy was targeted more frequently after that event. Sun Ha-yoon confirmed that his only dream was to stop living a lie. He wanted to reach paradise to finally leave his past behind. Sun Ha-yoon realized their paths would inevitably diverge when he left. Vega questioned why the girl did not simply follow him. The girl explained that she lacked the requirements for entry. Paradise required rigorous testing that a disabled person could not pass. Vega asked what would become of her once he departed. Sun Ha-yoon claimed she would manage to survive on her own. She reminded the goddess that she was once a 7-star awakened warrior. Her confidence remained high despite her current physical limitations. Vega asked exactly what had stripped the girl of her power. Sun Ha-yoon described her battle against Barbados, the dragon of 1,000 curses. The 9-star monster had placed a permanent seal upon her mana. She lived with the consequences of that fight for 5 years. She had demanded a promise from Kwon Jin years ago. She asked him to stay by her side until he could afford his passage. She framed it as a debt for the 3 years she had protected him. Once he saved enough, he was free to leave for paradise. She admitted she had been selfish and cruel to bind him to her. She had feared being alone in a world full of monsters. She never expected the young man to develop a stigma of his own. His recent fame ensured he would reach his goal much faster than expected. Sun Ha-yoon accepted this outcome as her personal karma. She pulled a wooden box from beneath her bed. She withdrew a prosthetic leg and strapped it firmly into place. She grabbed her cane and prepared to leave the room. She asked Vega to keep a watchful eye on Kwon Jin. She stepped out onto the city streets, navigating with practiced ease. Her heightened senses as an awakened allowed her to traverse the crowds safely. Inside the bank, she requested the withdrawal of her entire balance. The teller calculated the total, including her long-term investments. The final figure reached over 300 million coins. Sun Ha-yoon felt a wave of sadness wash over her. The amount would barely cover the cost of the Eye of the Dragon Demon. She had spent the last 5 years fighting for her life and paying medical bills. She transferred the funds to a debit card and exited the bank. She saw Kwon Jin standing on the sidewalk, snacking on a protein bar. He looked surprised to see her, asking where she had disappeared to. She guided the confused young man toward a high-end shopping mall. She ordered him to select 5 expensive suits for himself. Kwon-oh-jin protested, complaining about the high prices of the store. He asked what had suddenly possessed her to splurge like this. Sun Hyun smiled and told him they were on a date. On the way back, she told him she felt sorry for his lifestyle. He always wore rags and survived on cheap energy bars. She explained that she had emptied her accounts to treat him properly. Kwon-oh-jin asked why she was wasting her hard-earned money. She insisted that he had suffered enough because of her burdens. He finally agreed, though he warned her not to cry when the money ran out. Sun Hyun laughed, promising they still had enough for a steak dinner. They approached a luxury restaurant, the scent of beef drifting into the street. Kwon-oh-jin looked at the entrance, his eyes widening in anticipation. Before they entered, he glanced at a nearby bistro across the road. A group of wealthy hunters laughed loudly at a table near the window. Kwon-oh-jin turned back to the steakhouse, pushing the heavy glass door open. The interior was warm, quiet, and smelled of expensive spices. He watched Sun Hyun hobble to a booth, her expression calm and resolved. He realized she was trying to apologize for the years of isolation. He sat down opposite her, folding his hands on the white tablecloth. The waiter arrived, placing 2 oversized menus on the table. Kwon-oh-jin ignored the prices, deciding to enjoy the moment. He knew that tomorrow he would return to the gates and the blood. For tonight, he would allow himself to be a normal young man. Sun Hyun studied his face, looking for any sign of his lingering childhood trauma. She saw only the focused, determined gaze of a survivor. She ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the list. Kwon-oh-jin did not protest, accepting the luxury with a slight nod. The goddess Vega hovered near the ceiling, watching the pair with curiosity. She wondered if this small act of kindness would change their final fates. The food arrived, steaming and perfectly prepared. They ate in silence, the weight of their history hanging between them. Kwon-oh-jin looked at his reflection in the polished silverware. He saw a man who had already died once and returned to change everything. He looked at Sun Hyun and saw the girl who had saved him. He wondered if paradise was worth the cost of leaving her behind. The restaurant lights dimmed as the evening air grew cold outside. He finished his meal, feeling the tension in his shoulders begin to dissipate. He stood up and offered his arm to help her stand. They walked out into the cool night air, the city neon reflecting in the puddles. Kwon-oh-jin knew his next mission would be his most dangerous yet. He needed the eye of the dragon demon to break the monster's curse. He looked at Sun Hyun and promised her that everything would change. The girl looked away, hiding the tears forming in her eyes. They walked toward the subway station, blending into the late-night crowd. The destiny of the lightning wolf was only just beginning. The steam rises from a platter of freshly cooked crabs. Sun Hyun stares at the shell, suddenly losing her appetite for the barbecue. She admits that she would have preferred the crab instead. Kwon-oh-jin looks at her with genuine surprise. He reminds her that she has always hated seafood. The girl shrugs, saying it does not matter anymore. They begin to eat in the quiet restaurant. Sun Hyun struggles to pry the meat from the tough, armored shell. Kwon-oh-jin reaches over to assist her with the task. He places a clean piece of tender crab meat onto her plate. Sun Hyun tastes it and nods, noting that it is delicious. Kwon-oh-jin encourages her to try another piece. He thanks his sister for the meal, promising to buy them coffee afterward. Hyun requests a latte as the bill arrives. 2 young women approach their table with hesitant steps. They ask if the young man is truly Kwon-oh-jin. He confirms his identity with a brief nod. The girls gasp, their eyes wide with disbelief. They ask if he is really the legendary lightning wolf. One girl mentions she saw him at the station during the chaos. She adds that he looks even more handsome in person. Kwon-oh-jin glances at the crowded restaurant. He expected fame, but he knows this is the wrong time for a scene. He asks the girls to leave them in peace. The fans blush, giggling as they linger by the table. One girl thrusts her t-shirt forward, asking for a signature. Kwon-oh-jin takes the marker, finding their behavior strange but harmless. Sun Hyun stands up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She shouts at the girls, demanding to know if they have any decency. The fans recoil, asking who she is to yell at them. Sun Hyun wraps her arms around the young man. She declares that she is his official girlfriend. The fans whisper, clearly confused by the strange woman. They only wanted a simple autograph from the hero. Sun Hyun scoffs, calling the fans shameless and persistent. Kwon Oh-jin sighs, telling his sister that she has gone too far. Sun Ha-yoon warns him never to speak to strangers on the street again. Kwon Oh-jin replies that he has no interest in dating anyone right now. Sun Ha-yoon asks him to explain his reasoning. He says that women only ever want his money. The pair leaves the restaurant and heads toward a local karaoke bar. They spend the rest of the night singing and laughing together. As evening falls, they walk slowly toward their home. Kwon Oh-jin remarks on how quickly the time has flown. Sun Ha-yoon asks how much gold he has managed to save. He tells her he has exactly as much as he needs. Her smile fades as she realizes what that amount implies. She whispers that they do not have much time left together. She knows he intends to leave for paradise soon. Kwon Oh-jin admits he spent years saving for that specific goal. Ha-yoon hangs her head, tears forming in her eyes. She begs him not to leave her behind. She asks him to remember her when he is gone. Kwon Oh-jin promises that he has no intention of forgetting her. The next morning, the sun shines through the window. Kwon Oh-jin tells her he must stop by the bank. He promises to return before the day is over. The television news blares reports about the December Yonsan auction. The broadcast explains the rarity of the Eye of the Demon Dragon. It is a 6-star relic capable of lifting any curse. Sun Ha-yoon watches the screen with intense focus. She wonders if the dragon magic can handle 1,000 layered curses. She worries that her 300 million coins are not enough. She hopes for low turnout at the event. Sometimes, 6-star relics sell for surprisingly low prices. She prays for a miracle to save her life. The Yonsan auction house stands as a massive, towering office building. An attendant stops her at the entrance. He asks if she is a participant and hands her a registration form. A kind stranger offers to help her fill out the paperwork. An employee announces that seating is now mandatory. No one is allowed to leave the hall until the auction concludes. Sun Ha-yoon walks into the vast, silent room. She searches for a seat, feeling the stares of the other guests. The visitors whisper about the young woman appearing without an escort. The auctioneer steps onto the stage, signaling the start of the event. He presents the first item, an ash-cooled censer. It is a top-tier 4-star sacred relic. The starting price is set at 10 million coins. Bidding wars erupt as the price climbs higher and higher. Sun Ha-yoon watches the numbers, realizing it sold for twice her total savings. She consoles herself, hoping the Eye of the Demon Dragon is less popular. The auctioneer introduces the next item with a flourish. He reveals the 6-star relic, the Eye of the Demon Dragon. He explains that it merges with the owner's body upon activation. The curse-dispelling power would always be active. Sun Ha-yoon scans the room, searching for signs of interest. The bidders seem indifferent to the relic. She hopes she might actually secure the item. The auctioneer calls out a starting price of 100 million. Sun Ha-yoon places her bid immediately. The other participants turn to look at her. They mutter that she is just a pauper chasing a dream. She holds her breath, fearing any higher bids. A voice from the back shouts a bid of 2 billion. Sun Ha-yoon turns pale, her heart sinking. The price quickly exceeds 3 billion coins. She realizes she never stood a chance. She thinks of her life, abandoned by parents she never knew. Her childhood was a cycle of misery and survival. She only wanted to live a normal life with Kwon Oh-jin. A man steps up beside her, introducing himself as Cho Jong-cho. He says he represents the Lake of Stars Guild. He offers to lend her 6 billion coins. He places a hand on her knee, leering at her. He demands she stay by his side for 5 years in return. He suggests they drink and do whatever she knows how to do. Sun Ha-yoon feels a wave of nausea. She stares at the man, unable to speak. The heavy doors at the back of the hall swing open. A young man strides into the room. An employee tries to block him, citing the rules of the auction. Kwon Oh-jin shows his official association identification. The employee steps back, recognizing the special agent. The crowd falls silent, whispering that it is the man from the station. Sun Ha-yoon watches, her anxiety rising. Kwon Oh-jin drops 2 heavy suitcases onto the floor. He snaps the locks open, revealing stacks of cash. He announces a bid of 10 billion in cold, hard cash. The auctioneer confirms the sale at the maximum price. Kwon Oh-jin walks to the stage to collect the relic. He spots Sun Ha-yoon sitting in the front row. He ignores the confused murmurs of the crowd. He turns his gaze to the man sitting next to her. Cho Jong-cho stands up, demanding to know who he is. Kwon Oh-jin tells the man to leave the hall immediately. Cho Jong-cho shouts that he is a member of the Lake of Stars Guild. He asks if the agent knows who he is messing with. Kwano Jin reveals he is a special agent of the association. The man laughs, claiming he has never heard of him. Kwano Jin leans in, his eyes glowing with a cold light. He asks if the man wants to explain his actions to his guild leader. Cho Jong-cho pauses, suddenly recognizing the face from the news. He realizes he is speaking to the lightning wolf. The man drops to his knees, trembling in fear. He begs for mercy, promising never to speak of this encounter. Kwano Jin tells him to disappear from his sight forever. The man scrambles toward the exit, tripping over his own feet. Kwano Jin reaches out and takes Sun Ha-yoon's hand. He pulls her toward the door. They emerge onto the roof of the building. The wind whips through their hair as they stand above the city. Sun Ha-yoon asks what he has done with his ticket to paradise. Kwano Jin tells her to stand still and be silent. He holds the glowing relic in his palm. He raises the eye of the demon dragon toward her face. He tells her that all of her suffering ends today. The relic begins to flow into Sun Ha-yoon's eye. The girl cries out in sudden pain. She covers her face with both hands. Kwano Jin pulls her into a tight hug. He tells her the pain will pass soon. After a long moment, Sun Ha-yoon opens her eyes. Her right eye glows with the dark power of the dragon demon. The young man asks her how the view of paradise looks now. He then reaches for her prosthetic leg. He replaces the old limb with a more modern, advanced model. Sun Ha-yoon admires the sleek design. She notes that it feels far more comfortable. Kwano Jin tells her to simply accept the gift for what it is. The girl begins to cry again, questioning his reckless spending. She reminds him that he worked hard to save that money. They had agreed he would buy tickets to paradise instead. Kwano Jin smiles at her through the memory of a childhood lie. He recalls a fire in the kitchen from years ago. He had promised to save her then, just as he had lied today. The two begin to cook dinner together in their small kitchen. A sudden flame flares up on the stove. The food burns quickly, turning into a blackened mess. Sun Ha-yoon blames herself for the ruined meal. She admits she tried to strengthen the flame using her stigma. Kwano Jin watches her with a worried expression. He knows she only just started her physical rehabilitation. He doubts she can control her stigmata properly yet. He asks if she burned herself during the accident. Sun Ha-yoon shakes her head and smiles. She says her right eye sees much better than before. Kwano Jin guesses the dragon demon's eye is the cause. He expresses hope that there are no hidden side effects. The goddess Vega appears, telling them there is nothing to fear. She explains that the relic has interacted with the girl's stigma. Sun Ha-yoon lacks control for now, but the mark remains stable. The girl declares that she understands the situation. The dragon stigma is not part of the 12 zodiac constellations. It remains just as powerful despite its rarity. Only 20 bearers of this specific mark exist in the world. Kwano Jin focuses on her recovery as his primary goal. Sun Ha-yoon insists on pushing through her physical training. She hates the feeling of being in his debt. She asks him once again to trust her strength. The young man feels a pang of frustration. He wonders why he failed to save her in his past life. He questions if his failure led to the destruction of the world. The goddess asks what he plans to do next. Kwano Jin admits he needs her divine assistance. Vega pledges her full support to his cause. Kwano Jin calls Captain Hanjin Man. He requests a 3-month leave of absence. He states his intent to dedicate the time to intense training. The captain sighs, noting the hundreds of clients waiting for him. Kwano Jin stands firm, needing protection from those who use him. The captain eventually grants the request. He asks where the young man plans to train in secret. Kwano Jin finds himself inside the divine sanctuary. Vega stands before him, ready to assist. He suggests a sparring match to test his limits. The goddess warns that the power gap is too wide. She fears she might accidentally shatter his body. Kwano Jin asks her to hold back her true strength. He realizes he overestimated his own current abilities. Vega decides to summon a spirit imbued with her own soul. A wolf-like entity named Lurk appears before them. The beast asks if his mistress has summoned him for a task. Kwano Jin eyes the powerful wolf with excitement. Vega tells the beast that this human came from the future. Lurk asks if this is truly the savior of the world. The protagonist struggles to hide his knowledge of the beast. The beast begins the sparring session on the lady's command. Kwano Jin prepares himself to face the spirit. The beast lunges forward with blurring speed. The young man finds himself pinned to the floor instantly. He stares up, confused by the sudden defeat. Lurk mocks the limited capabilities of a human. 2 months of grueling training pass in the sanctuary. Lurk yells that there are no breaks in a real battle. Kwano Jin falls repeatedly, his entire body aching. He has not lasted more than a minute in any session. His lightning spear and thunder skills have only risen 1 level. The young man demands that the wolf fight for real. Lurk notes that a real fight is possible within the sanctuary. The beast explains that Vega can bend reality here. She can resurrect him even if he truly dies. Vega screams in protest, refusing to allow such danger. Kwano Jin insists that he cannot grow without risking death. The goddess reluctantly agrees, but tells him to be careful. The sanctuary's power shifts, warping the environment. Lurk watches the boy with renewed scrutiny. He doubts a human this weak can protect the goddess. The beast prepares to show him his true power. Kwano Jin feels a sudden, suffocating terror. The wolf grows in size, his bloodlust filling the air. The young man realizes the beast intends to kill him. He decides to strike first, rushing into the attack. Lurk laughs at the predictable move. Kwano Jin leaps into the air, faking his strike. He activates the lightning spear skill, directing a bolt at the wolf. Lurk withstands the blast and counters with a heavy paw. The protagonist is sent flying backward into a wall. Blood drips from his chest as he loses consciousness. Vega screams as he collapses on the stone floor. The young man gasps, waking up with a start. He stands, groaning in sharp physical pain. Lurk asks if he now understands his own arrogance. The wolf questions how much death he can endure. Kwano Jin rushes into the fray once again. The beast recognizes a flicker of potential in the boy. The young man is counterattacked and wounded again. Blood stains his clothes as he struggles to stand. Lurk declares that his attacks are useless against a protege. The protagonist realizes he needs a new strategy to survive. Kwano Jin merged the Lyra stigma with the owl's power, a new hybrid skill manifested as wings of pure lightning. The Lyra stigma glowed with 4 stars of intensity. His lightning discharge skill surged to level 5. The sudden burst of energy caught Lurk off guard. The wolf spirit frantically moved to defend himself. Lurk stared in disbelief at the strange, shimmering light. The beast recognized that these abilities originated from an unknown source. He questioned how a fresh awakener could wield such power. The wolf's eyes narrowed with sudden, sharp anger. He accused the young man of being dangerously arrogant. Lurk lunged forward and struck Kwano Jin with full force. The protagonist collapsed to the floor, his energy flickering out. Lurk sneered at the fallen boy, calling him pathetic. The beast mocked the idea that wit could save the world. Vega stepped forward and shielded the young man with her body. She ordered the wolf to stop his assault immediately. The goddess expressed her deep disappointment in his lack of restraint. Lurk bowed his head low, asking for her forgiveness. Vega told him to wait until her ward regained consciousness. Kwano Jin stirred and pulled himself into a sitting position. He looked at the beast and proposed another round of sparring. Lurk blinked, stunned that the humans still wished to fight. The young man asked why the wolf had decided to stop. The beast roared in frustration at the human's persistence. He wondered how the boy could even stand on his feet. Lurk observed a glint of obsession in the hero's eyes. The wolf concluded that the boy had truly lost his mind. Kwano Jin insisted once again that the battle continue. Vega intervened, telling both of them they were overdoing it. The young man apologized, admitting he had gotten carried away. The goddess asked how much longer he would keep scaring her. She demanded that he promise to be more careful. Kwano Jin chuckled, wondering how she knew about pinky promises. Lurk sighed and finally accepted the young man's hidden talent. The beast realized he could not surpass such raw willpower. He whispered a prayer, asking the stars to protect the goddess. A month later, a knock echoed through Han Junman's office. The administrator motioned for his visitor to enter. Kwano Jin stepped into the room with a friendly smile. Han Junman greeted him, noting his recent promotion. He now served as the chief administrator of the emergency department. The two men decided to head out for a lunch break. They arrived at a local restaurant and scanned the menu. Han Junman asked about the progress of the training. Kwano Jin confirmed he had successfully reached the 4th star. He remarked that the restaurant's food tasted excellent. The administrator looked surprised by the rapid pace of his growth. He noted that the Lyra stigma was notoriously difficult to master. Kwon Jin replied that he had to work harder to be worthy. Han Jun-man admitted they were fortunate to have him. The young man asked if anything interesting had happened lately. The administrator spoke of a massive explosion near Sako. Mutant monsters had breached the gates in overwhelming numbers. The creatures were now scattered throughout the entire city. Estimated casualties were high, with 1,000 beasts reported. Kwon Jin frowned, acknowledging the severity of the situation. The administrator mentioned they had formed a special cleanup squad. The pay was substantial, reaching up to 3 million credits. Mirror crystals could be sold separately for extra profit. Kwon Jin considered the offer while thinking of Sun Ha-yoon. He wanted to earn money to treat her to fine meals. The young man volunteered to join the cleanup operation. Han Jun-man admitted he had planned to ask him anyway. The squad was scheduled to depart in 2 days. Kwon Jin confirmed that the timing worked perfectly for him. The administrator predicted the lightning wolf would draw much attention. The young man felt his appetite grow at the thought of work. He returned home to find Sun Ha-yoon practicing her skills. She moved with grace, using fire without the dragon's eye. Kwon Jin watched from the shadows, impressed by her technique. She seemed stronger than he had ever imagined possible. Sun Ha-yoon spotted her brother and beamed with delight. She asked if he had been watching her for a long time. He replied that her current form was already quite impressive. The girl admitted she had not fully recovered from her injury. Kwon Jin checked on her eye and her general well-being. She said the bandage was annoying, but otherwise she felt fine. Sun Ha-yoon asked if he would join her for dinner. He apologized, explaining he had already eaten grilled beef. The girl looked indignant at being left out of the meal. He promised to take her out after his upcoming mission. She asked about the nature of the assignment in Sako. He described the monster invasion and his volunteer status. Sun Ha-yoon declared without hesitation that she was coming along. The next day, the pair walked through the ruined city. Smoke billowed from burning buildings all around them. Kwon Jin noted the chaos and the scale of the destruction. Monsters were running rampant near the city center. Fortunately, most of the civilians had already been evacuated. A crowd of journalists and cameramen gathered near the perimeter. They were interviewing members of the Peace Star Guild. A guild member promised to bring peace back to the country. The cameras turned toward Kwon Jin and Sun Ha-yoon. Reporters recognized the lightning wolf and clamored for quotes. Kwon Jin ignored them, telling everyone to step aside. He had no time for interviews while the city burned. The journalists retreated, scribbling notes for their next articles. A team leader shouted for everyone to split into groups. Sun Ha-yoon noticed they were one person short for their group. A man approached them, shouting with visible enthusiasm. He asked if they were looking for a third member. The stranger introduced himself as Park Chun-hyun. He claimed to possess the rare tourist stigma. Kwon Jin recalled seeing him at the Dark Star raid. The man belonged to the prestigious Valhalla Guild. He asked about the status of their guild leader. Park Chun-hyun replied that the leader was investigating the society. Kwon Jin suspected that Lee Woo-huk was hitting dead ends. Sun Ha-yoon eyed their new companion with guarded curiosity. The group of 3 shook hands and began to move out. Suddenly, a familiar, arrogant figure stepped into their path. It was Park Jun-woo from the Imperial Scorpion Guild. Kwon Jin greeted him and sent his regards to Chong-hyuk. Park Jun-woo bristled with rage at the mention of his leader. A colleague pulled him back, urging him to remain calm. The man realized this was the boy from the auction hall. Kwon Jin stared at the third member of that rival group. It was Choi Jong-cho, displaying his guild's signature tattoos. The stranger stood before them with a fresh, jagged tattoo etched into his skin. Kwon Jin stared at the mark and questioned if the man had been cast out by the Lake of Stars Guild. He recalled the conversation with Han Jun-man that likely triggered this exile. Choi Jong-cho sneered, confirming that the protagonist was indeed the cause of his sudden expulsion. The rogue hunter claimed he preferred his new, more interesting organization anyway. He boasted that his team now possessed more than just the rare Aquarius stigma. Choi Jong-cho locked eyes with Kwon Jin and promised that the coming confrontation would be entertaining. The protagonist watched the man's mouth, wishing he would simply hold his tongue. Kwon Jin sensed the faint, lingering scent of a hound stigma radiating from the stranger. He decided that crossing paths here was actually a stroke of good fortune. The goal remained clear. He needed to claim that Aquarius stigma for himself. He mused that in a disaster zone, nobody would question a few unfortunate deaths. Park Chun-hyun lunged forward, slamming his heavy hammer into the nearest mutant. Kwon-oh-jin followed suit, thrusting his lightning spear with lethal precision. The thunderclap skill crackled, sending a violent surge of electricity through the monster's hide. The creature shrieked and turned to flee, unable to withstand the overwhelming voltage. Sun Ha-yun stepped into view, declaring that she would personally finish the escaping beast. She unleashed a torrent of fire, engulfing the monster in a swirling inferno. Park Chun-hyun wiped sweat from his brow, noting that these monsters were growing increasingly dangerous. He estimated their strength to be on par with 6-star threats. Sun Ha-yun agreed, observing that they were far more nimble than they were durable. Kwon-oh-jin surveyed the battlefield, noting that the cleanup operation proceeded with surprising ease. He paused, his eyes narrowing as he watched the creatures move. The monsters were all running in the exact same direction. A sudden, bright flash illuminated the sky several blocks ahead. A piercing scream echoed through the ruins of the city. Sun Ha-yun flinched, asking what could have caused such a loud disturbance. Park Chun-hyun suggested that someone was likely caught in a deadly trap. Kwon-oh-jin bolted from his position, sprinting toward the source of the noise. He recognized the tone of the cry, though he could not place the owner. He rounded a corner and found Park Jun-woo crumpled on the ground. Blood pooled beneath the young man's body, staining the cracked pavement. Kwon-oh-jin demanded to know what manner of monster could inflict such grievous harm. He looked toward his approaching allies, wondering if Sun Ha-yun carried a sufficient healing potion. He quickly dismissed the thought, knowing such severe wounds were beyond simple medical aid. Kwon-oh-jin knelt beside the dying man and pressed for an answer. Park Jun-woo gasped a single name, Choi Jong-cho, before his eyes rolled back. He slumped into silence, slipping into the finality of death. Kwon-oh-jin stood up and informed his companions that the boy was gone. He had failed to extract any useful information before the end. Their first meeting at the association had been frosty, but this outcome left a bitter taste. Kwon-oh-jin reached down and placed a firm hand over the deceased hunter's chest. He invoked the dark skies, siphoning the fading Scorpio stigma from the corpse. The stolen power granted him control over poisons and enhanced his natural agility. It was the perfect tool for an assassin to hide in plain sight. The shadow of his secret kept the act hidden from his nearby teammates. Kwon-oh-jin stood tall, satisfied that he no longer needed to hide his true capabilities. He signaled for the group to move forward, leaving the body behind. They engaged another wave of monsters, their weapons flashing in the dim light. The lightning spear pierced a carapace, while Sun Ha-yun's flames incinerated the remnants. Kwon-oh-jin halted the group, sensing that they were being led into a deeper peril. He advised them to stop the pursuit of the insect-like monsters immediately. Young-hun looked confused, his weapon still raised for the next strike. Kwon-oh-jin explained that they had been lured into a deliberate killing field. Park Chun-hyun looked around, stunned by the idea that simple monsters could possess such intelligence. The protagonist confirmed his suspicions, noting the danger of pushing further into the city center. He knew he could not risk the lives of his allies, but he still coveted the Aquarius stigma. He ordered them to return and warn the other guilds about the trap. Kwon-oh-jin insisted on finishing the reconnaissance alone, citing his own mobility as an advantage. Sun Ha-yun warned him to flee the moment the odds turned against him. He offered a quick promise and leaped toward the rooftops. The monsters continued to funnel the remaining awakened into the heart of the ruins. Choi Jong-cho stood in the center, clutching a pulsating, glowing orb. He laughed, marveling at how easily he controlled the creatures with his fragment of power. Ashad Khan stepped from the shadows, instructing the young man to follow his lead. He spoke of a black star that would soon eclipse the sky and end the world's logic. Choi Jong-cho dismissed the prophecy, caring only for his revenge against Kwon-oh-jin. He calculated that the upcoming carnage would provide the perfect cover for the murder. The deaths would be blamed on the monsters, leaving his own reputation untouched. Kwon-oh-jin crouched on a neighboring roof, observing his target from above. He noted that Choi Jong-cho appeared far too calm for a survivor of a monster raid. The man was a 6-star Aquarius, a class not typically known for combat prowess. He was clearly hiding a lethal secret, one powerful enough to impress the Apostle of the North Star. Kwon-oh-jin realized he needed a safeguard for the fight to come. He gripped his pendant and called upon the goddess for immediate assistance. Vega appeared, questioning why he had broken his promise to wait until the attack began. Kwon Jin stated that he had a specific villain to eliminate before more innocents died. He recounted the man's past crimes, describing a predator who had long preyed on the vulnerable. Vega remained skeptical, struggling to accept the morality of punishing a man for future sins. Kwon Jin knew he needed concrete evidence to sway her, but time was running out. He leapt from the roof, landing heavily in front of Choi Jong-cho. The protagonist declared that he knew about the man's hidden, terrible secret. Choi Jong-cho paled, his eyes widening in genuine terror. He wondered how the boy could have possibly learned the truth. The realization hit him that his carefully constructed mask was failing. Choi Jong-cho soon regained his composure and forced a jagged, cruel smile. He noted that Kwon Jin had arrived alone, which he considered a fatal mistake. He mocked the protagonist, claiming that a single stigma had made him arrogant. Choi Jong-cho raised the glowing orb, invoking the name of the dark heavens. Monsters emerged from the surrounding ruins, encircling the lone hunter. He laughed, promising that Kwon Jin would pay for his unwelcome intrusion. The protagonist stood his ground, confused by the man's sudden connection to the dark skies. He turned to the goddess and pleaded for a swift, decisive blessing. Vega watched the scene unfold, her doubt vanishing as she witnessed the malice in Choi Jong-cho. She told him to hurry and rewrite the history of this tragic day. A golden light enveloped Kwon Jin, surging through his veins like liquid fire. The sensation surpassed any power he had gained at the gates. He felt his training align with the divine energy, amplifying his every sense. Kwon Jin charged into the center of the horde, his spear a blur of motion. Every strike found a vital point, turning monsters into dust with a single touch. He realized that his current form allowed him to manifest lightning without effort. The power felt intoxicating, a stark contrast to his previous struggles. He focused on the insect monsters, noticing a strange rhythm to their movements. The harpoon strings whip through the air with lethal precision. Monsters crumble into dust as the wire slices through their carapaces. Jong-cho stares at the carnage with wide, disbelieving eyes. He screams that a 3-star awakened should not possess such overwhelming power. Kwon Jin stands amidst the debris and corrects the man's assumption. He reveals that his rank has already climbed to 4 stars. Terror grips Jong-cho as he begins to shriek at the surrounding horde. He commands the monsters to tear the protagonist to pieces immediately. The bald man beside him grabs his arm, urging him to stick to the original plan. Jong-cho turns and throttles his colleague in a fit of pure madness. He bellows that their entire scheme has been ruined by this single scoundrel. The villain's face flushes a deep, dangerous red with uncontrolled rage. Kwon Jin watches the scene and concludes that the man has finally lost his mind. He wonders if the ancient relic in the man's hand is poisoning his thoughts. The insects continue to swarm from every corner of the ruins. There appears to be no end to the waves of attackers. Vega asks the young hunter if he is still capable of holding his ground. Kwon Jin replies that he needs only a few more moments to finish the job. He glances at the goddess and notices her ethereal form beginning to flicker. He realizes she is reaching the absolute limit of her strength. Kwon Jin lunges forward, driving his lightning spear through a charging beast. The air crackles as he accelerates his assault to end the battle quickly. Sun Ha-yoon bursts onto the scene with a torrent of searing flames. She reminds him of his promise to avoid reckless heroics. Park Chung-hyun stands behind her, ready to support the line. The girl announces that she has successfully contacted the other cleanup squads. Reinforcements are already racing toward their location to assist. She insists that they must buy enough time for the others to arrive. Sun Ha-yoon reaches up and pushes her headband away from her eyes. She activates the dreaded dragon demon's eye to bolster her combat prowess. She admits she hoped to avoid using this power until she was fully accustomed to it. The girl watches her brother and decides she can no longer hide behind his back. She declares that she is the more experienced awakened of the two. Sun Ha-yoon vows that the monster will pay dearly for its greed. Waves of fire wash over the ruins, reducing monsters to smoldering ash. Kwon Jin stares at his older sister in complete and utter surprise. He never suspected she possessed such a devastating hidden technique. He watches as the flames dance with a life of their own. They move with the predatory intelligence of a living dragon. He scratches his shoulder where the monsters had previously wounded him. Sun Ha-yoon catches his gaze and snarls at the creatures. She promises that she will never forgive them for harming her little brother. She warns him not to expose a single inch of his body to the enemy again. Kwano Jin nods, refocusing his energy to rejoin the fray. The arrival of the other squads shifts the momentum of the battle. The new arrivals stop in their tracks, stunned by the sheer number of monsters. They spot the lightning wolf darting through the chaos with impossible speed. They wonder how a team of only 3 managed to survive such an onslaught. The protagonist surveys the battlefield and sees that victory is within their grasp. He turns his attention back to Young Cho, who is still clutching the glowing orb. The man looks disheveled, scratching his face with frantic, erratic movements. He repeats the same word over and over, demanding to know why he failed. He claims he followed every order exactly as he was instructed. He screams into the void, asking why Kwano Jin is still standing. Sun Hyun watches the man's breakdown and wonders what is wrong with him. The protagonist suspects the relic has fully consumed the man's sanity. He knows the situation will only deteriorate if they allow the man to continue. Kwano Jin leaps toward the villain and strikes him with his lightning spear. A sharp electric shock courses through the man's body. The relic begins to emit a jagged negative energy before cracking down the center. A localized tornado suddenly erupts, engulfing Youngcho completely. The squad watches in stunned silence as the winds howl around the man. The tornado dissipates, revealing that Youngcho has transformed into a monstrous beast. The creature repeats its demand that the protagonist be destroyed. It stares at its own clawed hands, confused by its sudden physical mutation. Kwano Jin watches in shock as the man loses his humanity. He asks Vega to hold on for just a little longer. The goddess struggles to maintain her form, admitting she has reached her limit. The blessing fades, leaving the protagonist vulnerable as a monster strikes. A sharp claw pierces directly through the warrior's body. Kwano Jin lets out a hollow laugh, ignoring the gaping wound. The raiders watch, unable to comprehend how he remains standing. He realizes the black aura has been whispering to Youngcho the entire time. The monster is drawing power from an external cosmic source. A plan clicks into place as the hero scans the ruins for Sun Hyun. He gestures for the girl to move toward the source of the dark energy. She must destroy the connection before the monster grows any stronger. Sun Hyun hesitates for a second before nodding in grim agreement. Kwano Jin tells her to move as fast as she possibly can. She retorts that she will be furious if he breaks his promise again. The young man watches her dash away and vows to keep his word. The creature continues to expand, its muscles bulging with unnatural mass. It asks the hero if he is ready to face his final judgment. Kwano Jin smirks, flips the beast off, and mocks its endless questioning. The two combatants collide in a violent, high-speed struggle. The hero realizes that compared to the previous wolf, this monster is a joke. He closes the distance and swings his spear with all his remaining force. The blade bounces off the creature's hide as if striking solid steel. The monster lashes out, wrapping its massive tail around the hero's waist. Kwano Jin finds himself pinned, unable to move or breathe. He activates a deep charge, pulsing lightning through his entire suit. The monster shrieks as the electricity sears its flesh. It loosens its grip, allowing the protagonist to break free. The beast growls that the attack caused it significant pain. Kwano Jin prepares another strike, determined to push his limits. The monster shakes off the damage, its power seemingly undiminished. The protagonist realizes his own mana reserves are running dangerously low. He searches for a way to turn the tide, but his techniques are failing. He spots a large container of liquid nearby, but it is useless to him. Attempting to draw power from it would be like emptying a dam with a straw. He realizes he cannot defeat the monster with his current approach. He wishes for the goddess's blessing, but knows it will not return. He scolds himself for thinking like a weakling who relies on others. He must find a way to win, using only his own internal strength. The monster laughs, questioning if the man has finally hit his wall. Kwano Jin ignores the taunt, focusing entirely on his own mana circulation. He knows he has a limit on how much mana he can draw at once. He realizes that without the seal's amplification, he must force the flow. He decides to concentrate all of his body's mana into his heart. He triggers a lightning bolt that surges directly through his chest. The sensation is like a hose being pinched shut, forcing a massive pressure spike. He cuts off the flow to his limbs to maximize the output at his core. A system warning flashes, telling him his level is too low for this enhancement. It recommends that he cease the skill immediately to prevent injury. Kwano Jin ignores the system and grips his spear with white-knuckled intensity. He charges at the monster, pouring every ounce of his soul into the strike. The beast stares in confusion, wondering what trick he is attempting. It gasps that it does not feel well, its voice fading into a whimper. Kwano-jin grips his spear tighter, annoyed by the monster's endless rambling. He realizes that as long as the dark star is linked to the host, he cannot win. He needs to destroy the source of the connection. A massive pillar of fire erupts in the distance, reaching toward the clouds. Park Chong-hyun reports that the surrounding monsters are finally cleared out. Kwano-jin notes that the timing of the strike was perfect. He fires his harpoon strings, snagging the monster by the head. He shouts that it is time to bring the fight to a permanent end. The beast loses its footing, screaming as it struggles against the wires. The protagonist leaps onto the creature's head, thrusting his spear into its maw. He releases a final, devastating electric charge directly into its brain. The beast collapses as the current fries its nervous system. Kwano-jin jumps back, exhaling as the monster dissolves into nothingness. He acknowledges that the technique was effective, though incredibly painful to execute. He wonders if this agony is merely the first of many side effects to come. The monster dissolved into a fine layer of gray ash upon the ruined floor. Kwano-jin stood amidst the debris, scanning the area for any remaining threats. He focused his intent, calling upon his unique ability to claim the lingering rewards. The dark skies above swirled, drawing in the faint residual power of the star. A glowing relic materialized in the air, its essence absorbed into the hero's system. His interface flickered with a notification that the transformation skill was successfully added. Kwano-jin observed his own hands, noting the potential of such a versatile power. His thoughts drifted toward the elusive Aquarius stigma he desperately needed to acquire. Aquarius awakenings lacked raw combat prowess, yet they excelled in vital healing and buffs. The ability to craft potent Aquarius potions promised a massive increase in his resources. He commanded the dark skies to consume the stigma, integrating its properties into himself. The stigmata of Lyra and Aquarius began to merge within his core, glowing brightly. A new skill, the kinship of water energy, registered in his status window. He understood that this synthesis allowed him to heal wounds simply by absorbing water. Sun Hyun hurried toward him, her face etched with genuine concern for his safety. She reached out, checking his posture to see if he suffered from hidden injuries. The girl scolded him for fighting alone, her voice trembling with lingering anxiety. Kwano-jin ignored her worry, reaching down to touch the girl's leg. Sun Hyun recoiled in confusion, wondering why he would perform such a bizarre gesture. He examined the limb, noting that her prosthetic was a high-quality piece of work. He knew a high-level Aquarius could eventually regenerate lost organs or damaged limbs. The young man stood up, his eyelids heavy with the crushing weight of exhaustion. He told her he needed sleep, leaving her questions regarding his touch unanswered. 3 days passed in the quiet isolation of his hidden sanctuary. Vega appeared before him, her form small and flickering due to strict spatial constraints. The goddess asked if he experienced any lingering pain from the recent upgrade. Kwano-jin replied that he felt fully recovered and ready for the next challenge. She expressed shock that he had mastered the complex skill in such a short time. Vega warned him that the technique required at least 8 stars for safe execution. She insisted that he avoid further enhancement until he reached 6 stars of power. The goddess lamented that she could not keep him under constant supervision for safety. She noted that Scorpio's disciples were actively collaborating with the Dark Star's forces. Kwano-jin confirmed this, explaining that he traveled to the city to investigate them. The media continued to treat him as a hero, making it impossible to walk outside. He remained officially unconscious in the eyes of the public to maintain his cover. Sun Hyun had brought him to this safe house immediately after the blackout. Vega mentioned that the guild would surely face retribution for their recent actions. Kwano-jin shook his head, noting that the guild had purged Choi Jong-chol's records. They had scrubbed the man's name from their official list to avoid any culpability. The Pandas Guild had even accused the Lake of Stars Guild of framing them. Vega cursed the audacity of the villains who dared to shift blame so brazenly. The hero stated that he would gather the necessary evidence to expose their deception. He would handle the situation personally, regardless of the guild's clever maneuvers. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Kwano-jin gripped his smartphone, clearing his throat to prepare for the day ahead. He called the association, requesting a meeting to discuss the brewing political storm. He asked for professional security until he fully recovered from his internal damage. He specifically requested the assistance of one of the association's top-tier awakened. The official on the line sounded alarmed, sensing the gravity of the hero's request. Kwon Jin promised to provide irrefutable evidence linking the guilds to the Dark Star. He finalized his plans for a press conference to reveal the truth to the world. He sat before a mirror, testing the limits of his new transformation skill. His reflection shifted, displaying the face of a completely different person. He filled his bathtub with water, curious about his new affinity for the element. He dipped his hand into the basin, watching the water swirl around his fingers. The effect was impressive, though he noted it required a significant volume of liquid. He stepped out of his home, spotting Sun Ha-yoon waiting near the entrance. She glared at him, refusing to disclose where she had been spending her time. He teased her about keeping secrets, warning that they should be honest with each other. Sun Ha-yoon reminded him that he was the one who usually kept his motives hidden. He told her not to worry, promising that they would see each other very soon. Choi Woo-jin stood waiting at the association, offering a firm, professional handshake. The man was known as the Lightning Dog, an 8-star hunter of legendary focus. Woo-jin remarked that acting as a bodyguard felt like a waste of his talents. Kwon Jin sensed the man's cold judgment, recognizing he was seen as a nuisance. He ignored the slight, prioritizing the safety of his upcoming public announcement. The press conference room buzzed with the frantic energy of reporters and cameras. Flashbulbs popped as Kwon Jin stepped onto the podium, his expression stoic and calm. He introduced himself as a special representative of the association to the crowd. He announced that he would not take personal questions, focusing on the guild scandal. He explicitly named the Pandas Guild as the true masters of the Dark Star. The room erupted into chaos, with reporters shouting for proof of his bold claims. Kwon Jin opened his mouth to speak, but a sharp, metallic taste filled his throat. A violent cough racked his body, splashing bright red blood onto the podium. He staggered, his vision blurring as his legs gave way beneath him. Choi Woo-jin vaulted over the table, catching the hero before he hit the floor. The audience gasped in horror, cameras clicking rapidly to capture the falling hero. The association members rushed forward, their faces pale with panic and confusion. Kwon Jin clutched his chest, feeling the unstable mana tearing at his internal organs. He realized he had pushed his body too far during the fight with the monster. The side effects of his forced enhancement were finally claiming their heavy toll. He looked up at the ceiling, the bright lights fading into a dull, gray haze. He had to remain conscious long enough to finish the message he started. He grabbed the microphone, his voice raspy and choked with thick, warm blood. The reporters leaned in, desperate to hear the final words of the collapsing man. He pointed a shaking finger at the guild representatives hiding in the back row. The truth was etched into his eyes, a silent accusation that silenced the room. The association guards moved to secure the area, pushing back the aggressive press. Kwon Jin's head slumped, his strength failing him as the world went dark. He had gambled his life on this performance, and the cost was now due. The guild leaders watched with cold eyes, hoping the hero would never wake again. But the hero's hand remained clenched, still holding the evidence of their betrayal. The power of the Dark Star pulsed within him, struggling against his failing heart. He would survive this, for he was destined to be the strongest of all. Choi Woo-jin shouts for the cameras to stop filming immediately. He demands the medical staff rush to the podium. The bodyguard touches the blood on the floor and frowns. He announces to the panicked crowd that Kwon Jin was poisoned. Choi Woo-jin orders the exit doors to be locked and secured. Every person in the room becomes a suspect in the attack. He scans the faces of the nearby awakened individuals. The bodyguard notes that none of them possess more than 3 stars. He concludes that they lack the skill to deceive him. Choi Woo-jin activates his hunting dog tag to track the culprit. The device pulses as he senses foreign mana in the air. The energy signature feels distinct from the Lyra stigma. He watches as the trail of mana leads toward the exit. Choi Woo-jin follows the glowing scent into the hallway. He instructs his staff to gather alibis from everyone present. The bodyguard steps outside into the cool evening air. He spots the car that Kwon Jin arrived in earlier. The mana trail clings heavily to the vehicle's door handle. He realizes the poison was administered before the press conference began. Choi Woo-jin guesses the trail leads back to their home. He activates his Beast Steps ability to move with blinding speed. The bodyguard rushes through the city streets to collect evidence. News reports begin to flood the airwaves about the poisoned hero. He arrives at the front of the hero's residence. He recalls that Kwano Jin had been unconscious for several hours. The attacker clearly prepared for this opportunity well in advance. He notes the lack of surveillance cameras in this secluded area. The bodyguard approaches the trash bag sitting near the curb. The mana trail glows brightest against one of the plastic liners. He wonders if Kwano Jin encountered the assassin on the way. Choi Woo-jin finds clear evidence of the Scorpio stigma. He knows only members of the Pandinas Guild use that mark. The bodyguard confirms the Pandinas Guild orchestrated the entire hit. 10 days pass while the world reacts to the public collapse. Media outlets replay the footage of the hero coughing up blood. The public remains in a state of deep shock and confusion. Kwano Jin sits on his hospital bed staring at the window. He decides he can no longer tolerate the boredom of recovery. The young man practices controlling small bolts of static electricity. He knows these minor sparks hold little value in a real fight. Hunjun Man enters the room and asks if he is leaving. The man apologizes for his lack of preparation during the event. Kwano Jin shakes his head and dismisses the guilt. He explains that the fault lies entirely with the poisoners. The hero reveals that the press conference was a calculated show. He credits the success of his plan to the investigation by Wu Jin. Junman notes that the Pandina's representatives fled the city. The Valhalla Guild has already begun hunting them down for revenge. Valhalla officially takes its place among the top 10 guilds. Soon Ha-yoon arrives to transport the young man to their new home. She gestures to a spacious building and asks if he is surprised. Kwano Jin stares at the architecture in genuine disbelief. The girl admits she earned a large sum for their relocation. Bank employees process the funds without asking any questions. They walk into the bedroom, which dwarfs their previous living space. Kwano Jin points to the 2 beds and asks for an explanation. Ha-yoon replies. She highlights that the house finally has consistent hot water. Kwano Jin feels a rush of gratitude for these simple luxuries. He pulls the girl into a tight, emotional hug. Ha-yoon blushes deeply as she leans against his chest. He tells her that she is the best person he knows. The young man breathes heavily as he moves closer to her. Suddenly, the silence is broken by a sharp ringing phone. Ha-yoon glares at the device, clearly furious at the interruption. The caller is Park Jun-woo, demanding an immediate meeting. He reports that the Valhalla Guildmaster was attacked. He explains that Lee Woo-hyuk requested to see the hero immediately. They walk through a secluded area that resembles a dark dungeon. Jun-woo admits they kept the incident secret from the public. The hero suspects the involvement of the villain Ashad Khan. They enter the room to find Lee Woo-hyuk struggling to breathe. The guild leader apologizes for his weakened, pathetic appearance. Kwano Jin asks him to explain exactly what happened. Lee Woo-hyuk describes losing a battle against a rival group. He confirms they tracked the Dark Star. The situation changed when they moved to attack Ashad Khan. A mysterious, incredibly strong old man appeared by his side. Lee Woo-hyuk admits his team lost without landing a single hit. He reveals that Ashad Khan called the stranger Chen Yun. Kwano Jin remembers receiving the strict stigma from a previous fight. He wonders if this King of Owls is the end of the world. The hero expresses relief that his allies survived the encounter. He notes that the group will likely scramble to destroy evidence. Lee Woo-hyuk hands him a note with a secret contact number. The contact belongs to a Dark Star member who hates the society. That night, Kwano Jin walks alone down a deserted city street. He spots a stranger approaching him from the shadows. Our hero blocks the man's path and warns him to stay quiet. Kwano Jin demands that the man answer his list of questions. The stranger remarks that this is a very aggressive greeting. The hero replies that they have no time for polite tea. He declares that he knows the man works for Dark Star. The informant introduces himself as Jang Soo-ho, a relic creator. Kwano Jin identifies himself and mentions his Valhalla connection. Jang Soo-ho seems surprised by the hero's affiliation with the guild. The hero asks what information the creator is willing to provide. Jang Soo-ho says he will speak only after a specific favor. Kwano Jin asks what happens if he refuses the deal. The man smiles as he prepares to state his terms. Kwano Jin stares at the man, weighing the threat of the explosive artifact. He observes the divine device strapped tightly to the informant's chest. Jung Sako kneels on the cold floor, his eyes filled with desperation. He explains that the Dark Star organization holds his young son hostage. The informant pleads for the hero to rescue the boy from their grip. Kwano-jin notes the shift in the city's atmosphere since the guild ambush. He understands that the security within the society has finally begun to fracture. Sako admits his own value as a skilled relic creator kept him tethered to them. 3 long, agonizing years have passed since the boy was taken away. The protagonist asks for the child's name and his current age. Sako reveals the boy is 10 years old and goes by the name Chong-hun. Kwano-jin demands the man repeat the details in reverse order to test his honesty. The informant recites the information perfectly without a single hesitation. The hero accepts the mission, trusting the sincerity in the man's voice. Their car tears down the nighttime highway at a blinding, dangerous speed. Sako describes the structure of the Dark Star Society as they drive. He explains that the demon realm lies behind a massive gate at the North Pole. The organization operates through 7 branches divided by the members' nationalities. The southern branch is led by John Doyen, known as the King of Owls. Kwano-jin processes the news that this man holds the 6th rank in power. He compares the threat level to the formidable holder of the Great Bear. Sako offers a protective bracelet to the hero, hoping for his son's safety. He explains that it is a 5-star holy relic crafted by a master artisan. The artifact creates a powerful barrier 3 times a day for its wearer. Sako confesses he originally crafted it as a gift for his own child. The vehicle screeches to a halt outside a dark, abandoned warehouse. Kwano-jin asks if the boy is held inside this desolate structure. Sako confirms the location and estimates 5 guards are patrolling the perimeter. The hero asks if the father has seen his son at all during these years. The informant admits he only receives occasional photographs of the child. Kwano-jin respects the man's unwavering love and devotion to his family. Armed men suddenly emerge from the shadows, surrounding the pair. One guard sneers that he did not expect the hero to bring the lightning wolf. He boasts that Mr. Han will be absolutely delighted by this turn of events. Sako gasps in shock at the presence of Han's elite operatives. The hero observes that these are all dangerous 6-star combatants. The enemies charge forward with clear, lethal intent to kill. Kwano-jin recognizes that security was weakened to lure him into this trap. He activates his deep charge skill and thrusts his spear forward. The weapon pierces an attacker, instantly removing him from the fight. Young Sako stares in disbelief at the hero's overwhelming combat speed. Kwano-jin declares there is one less opponent standing in their way. He prepares to dismantle the rest of the group one by one. The stigma on his arm pulses, absorbing additional mana from the fallen foes. The hero surveys the bodies of the defeated men littering the ground. He notes they lack true experience despite their high star rating. His mana channels feel significantly stronger than they were during the last battle. Kwano-jin urges Sako to keep moving toward the basement entrance. They descend into the dark, echoing depths of the facility. Sako calls out his son's name into the suffocating silence. The hero activates his Venotic canes but detects no life signs nearby. He suspects the child was never kept in this specific location. Sako continues to shout, his voice cracking with mounting anxiety. Kwano-jin spots a large, ominous box sitting in the center of the room. He lifts the lid only an inch before slamming it shut again. The truth of the situation hits him with cold, crushing certainty. He realizes they never intended for the father to reunite with his son. Anger boils within the hero as he stares at the empty box. Kwano-jin tells the informant they must evacuate the building immediately. He hears the distinct sound of footsteps approaching from the entrance. The hero senses at least 10 people entering the warehouse above them. He signals for Sako to stay close as they retreat toward the exit. He concludes that John Doyen is not among the incoming intruders. A strange, mechanical humming sound vibrates through the floorboards. Kwano-jin realizes the enemies are setting a trap to bury them alive. A massive explosion rocks the foundation of the entire warehouse. The shockwave hits them before they can reach the safety of the door. Fire and debris rain down on the pair in the dark basement. Kwano-jin leans heavily on his spear, gasping for air amidst the smoke. The holy bracelet's barrier saved them from the brunt of the blast. He searches the rubble for the missing informant. He finds Sako buried beneath a pile of jagged concrete blocks. The man's body is broken and bleeding from multiple fatal wounds. Sako holds a small flash drive in his trembling palm. He offers the drive to the hero, containing the promised information. The informant whispers a final request for the hero to find his son. Kwon Jin remains silent, knowing the child is already lost. He wonders if a lie would be kinder than the brutal truth. A voice echoes from above, confirming that the lightning wolf is still alive. The hero hears an enemy creeping up behind him for a surprise strike. He spins around in a blur and impales the attacker with his spear. Kwon Jin tells the man he should not have interrupted his thoughts. Sako begs the hero to flee before Ashad Khan can reach them. The hero ignores the warning and hands the man some healing drops. He promises the informant that he will return shortly. Ashad Khan stands in the doorway, mocking the hero's desperate situation. He asks if the young man is planning a path to survive. Kwon Jin fires a harpoon shot to bind the surrounding henchmen. He tells Ashad Khan that his mother's last wish was for her son's protection. The strings tighten, deactivating the guards as they cough up blood. Ashad Khan draws his sharp sword and steps into the clearing. The hero charges forward, channeling lightning through his weapon. He strikes with his strongest move, but the blade leaves no mark. Ashad Khan expresses mild surprise at the durability of his own armor. He asks if he is truly fighting a mere 4-star opponent. Exploding feathers erupt from the villain's hands, filling the air. Kwon Jin dodges the projectiles with refined, instinctive reflexes. He thinks that if they had fought 6 months later, he might have won. Kwon Jin activates his expansion skill to bridge the gap. He gains the first-level skill, Lightning Flame. The young hunter becomes obsessed with the new power. He delivers a crushing, lightning-infused blow to his opponent. Kwon Jin attempts to use expansion to escape the closing distance. The massive difference in their mana pools leaves him no choice. He realizes he must end the confrontation immediately. Ashad Khan turns his eyes toward the great stars of Strix. He prays for the blessing of the Dark Star with fervent reverence. Ashad Khan stands before the towering, spectral silhouette of an owl. He declares that the time of the Strix has arrived. Kwon Jin watches the villain with growing confusion. He assumes the man is merely a mid-level employee. Two distinct faces emerge upon Ashad Khan's shifting features. The hero notes that this foe is not even the final boss. Ashad Khan surges forward to launch another assault. The protagonist struggles to find a counter for such overwhelming speed. Ashad Khan mocks the hero for his constant attempts to flee. He closes the distance with terrifying precision. Kwon Jin dodges the strike, though the effort leaves him gasping. Ashad Khan notes the narrow miss at his opponent's throat. The hero's right hand and weapon are shattered by the impact. Ashad Khan sneers that the boy is now unable to retaliate. Kwon Jin stands amidst the blood, refusing to yield. He declares that the fight continues as long as he remains standing. Ashad Khan calls the young man a delusional fool. He unleashes a brutal strike that sends the hero crashing to the earth. Ashad Khan asks if the boy finally intends to stop. He invites the hero to keep fighting until the end. Kwon Jin lies motionless on the ground, struggling for every breath. Ashad Khan expresses a strange, fleeting regret. He notes that their paths will never cross again. The villain turns his back and walks away into the distance. The protagonist remains still in the pouring rain. Ashad Khan pauses, surprised by the sudden, torrential downpour. He wonders if a typhoon has arrived to mark his victory. He prepares to report the successful mission to the association. Ashad Khan clutches his chest, feeling a sharp, unexpected pain. He questions why he feels exhausted after battling a 4-star hunter. He decides to leave before the blessing's side effects manifest. Ashad Khan stops, noticing the ground beneath him remains dry. He looks around at the heavy rain hitting the surrounding area. He realizes something is absorbing every drop of water. Kwon Jin begins to push himself up from the mud. He asks his opponent where he thinks he is going. Ashad Khan spins around to see the hero rising to his feet. Kwon Jin notes that he miscalculated the weather conditions earlier. The air vibrates with an intense, gathering aura of water. He explains that his power is amplified by the proximity to rain. The hero asks if Ashad Khan still believes in the time of Strix. Kwon Jin stands tall, appearing completely unharmed by the previous blows. He announces that his own time has finally arrived. A massive, jagged bolt of lightning tears through the dark sky. The hero lunges forward with renewed, terrifying speed. Ashad Khan cries out in disbelief at the sudden recovery. Kwon Jin asks if the final boss can have 2 phases. He swings his weapon with the force of a storm. Ashad Khan demands to know what the boy is babbling about. He raises his guard to deflect the incoming strike. Unexpectedly, the villain's knees buckle under his own weight. Kwano Jin watches as the blessing's backlash begins to tear him apart. Ashad Khan's skin withers, and his face ages rapidly. The hero surmises that the power of Strix is remarkably weak. Ashad Khan screams for the boy to shut his mouth. He attempts to fire an energy blast through the agony. Kwano Jin pushes through the attack, closing the gap. He prepares to execute his Thunderstrike skill. Ashad Khan blocks the blow, but the effort shatters his composure. The villain mocks the hero, claiming pain will always remain. Ashad Khan asks if the boy has lost the capacity for suffering. Kwano Jin declares that he feels every ounce of agony. He explains that enduring the pain is simply a necessity. The hero maintains his mana levels despite the severe internal damage. He ignores the punishment his body receives from every movement. Kwano Jin glances toward the spot where Sako lies. He wonders if the informant's son can truly be saved. He accepts that some things are lost forever. He ignores the screaming nerves in his broken limbs. The hero decides that perseverance is the only path forward. Kwano Jin strikes again, shattering the villain's final defenses. Ashad Khan cowers in terror, begging the hero to stay back. He tries to retreat, but his body refuses to obey. He screams that the boy is nothing but a true demon. Kwano Jin calmly replies that he is merely an ordinary man. He ignores the accusation and kneels beside the dying Sako. He asks the informant if he is still alive. Sako stares in shock, witnessing the defeat of his tormentor. Kwano Jin tells the man he has successfully found his son. Sako weeps with joy, his lifelong dream finally fulfilled. A young boy emerges from the shadows to stand before his father. The child asks what has happened to his father's body. Sako apologizes, whispering that he is tired and needs sleep. The informant's chest is pierced by jagged rebar and blood. He tells the boy to follow the hero and obey his commands. The child nods, promising to do as his father asks. Sako says he will be gone for a long time. He promises to return to see his son in the future. Sako embraces the boy one final time. He closes his eyes, drifting into the silence of death. Kwano Jin cancels his transformation skill, returning to his natural form. He notes the lingering pain in his now-healed wounds. He reflects on the fact that he arrived in time for the boy. The hero realizes he has ascended to a new level. Lyra's stigma pulses on his skin, now reaching 5 stars. He remembers receiving his 4th star only months ago. Kwano Jin wonders if Vega will be impressed by his progress. He knows he still has a long way to go. He resolves to become stronger to protect his secrets. The goddess asks if he has finally awakened from his slumber. Vega notes that he ignored all her warnings to rest. Kwano Jin realizes he is lying on the goddess's lap. Vega tells him they will discuss his recklessness later. The hero tries to recall the events leading to his arrival. He remembers seeing Sun Hyun and then losing consciousness. He wonders how many days have passed since the battle. He asks why Vega is currently in her true form. Vega informs him that he has slept for 4 days. She explains that Hyun visited the sanctuary out of concern. The goddess notes that her restriction period has finally ended. Kwano Jin asks how she maintains this form outside the sanctuary. Vega explains that the wolf lurk helped stabilize her presence. She gained the ability to remain in her true form longer. Kwano Jin receives the fragments of the awakened Ashad's records. He acquires the 3rd-level skill, helmet, and armor of darkness. His skills shift, evolving under the influence of the stigma. He notices the quality of his mana has fundamentally changed. He wonders about the power waiting at the 8th star. The 4th condition for opening the Black Heavens is fulfilled. The Dark Heavens part and the inheritance process begins. Ashad Khan's memories flash before the hero's eyes. A mysterious voice asks if the Lightning Wolf works with Valhalla. An unseen interlocutor confirms the alliance and mentions the association. They discuss the need to handle the situation immediately. This is the final inheritance of the villain's fractured memories. The voice vows to deal with the hero personally. They mention the pending investigation into the Italian case. The conversation turns to the dangerous Queen of Leeches. The interlocutor claims the queen is currently in the demonic kingdom. They admit it is difficult to control her actions. Suddenly, the memories of Lane Huck collide with the villain's data. Fragments of the past are lost in the violent transition. Black Heaven automatically saves the most vital memories for inheritance. The progress of the ritual continues in the dark void. The inheritance process depends on the speed of his recovery. Kwano Jin studies the glowing data scrolling before his eyes. He decides he has already gathered enough information for now. A new quest notification pulses on his interface. He must consume mirror crystals to open the Black Heavens. The young man glances toward the goddess, considering his next move. A confusing quest objective appears, leaving him momentarily baffled. He asks if the goddess can grant him constant blessings now. Vega shakes her head, noting her restrictions remain partially in place. The goddess declares she can still support him during active combat. She flicks her wrist, manifesting a crackling display of pure power. Kwano Jin stares at the display, his eyes wide with amazement. He wonders if lightning can truly be controlled with such precision. Vega warns him not to underestimate her divine capabilities. The young man stands up, testing his strength on the floor. He assures her that he feels much better than before. He promises to exercise more caution in his future endeavors. Vega glances at the door, noting another person approaching in anger. Sun Hyun bursts into the room with a furious expression. She demands to know if Kwano Jin has finally woken up. The girl grabs the young man by his tunic, shaking him. She asks if he understands how worried she has been lately. Kwano Jin offers a sheepish apology for his recklessness. Sun Hyun scoffs, calling his apology completely worthless. She continues swearing, throwing colorful insults at the young man. Wolf Lurk watches from the corner, calling the girl a loud lizard. Lurk claims a true warrior must risk his life to grow stronger. Hyun glares at the beast, asking why he uses such a name. She reminds the creature that she possesses a human name. Lurk grunts, saying he has no desire to remember human names. He insists that any dragon's apprentice is merely a lizard woman. Lurk glances at the hero, noting the girl suffers for his sake. Kwano Jin looks at the wolf, indignant at the sudden mood shift. Vega asks the young man to explain the events of that day. Kwano Jin recounts his battle, carefully omitting the black sky. Sun Hyun listens intently, finally understanding the source of the darkness. She asks if he truly defeated the 7-star ranker. Kwano Jin replies that he came close to finishing the fight. He admits the rain was the only reason he survived. Hyun wonders if the Lyra stigma is truly that powerful. Vega remarks that she finds the victory difficult to believe. She notes he triumphed over someone at a higher level. Lurk points out the hero has reached the 9th level of lightning. The wolf suggests the man must train harder for the next stage. He claims the 10th level will grant him the lightning flame. Kwano Jin raises his hand, manifesting a 4th level lightning flame. He explains he obtained this power during his last desperate battle. Lurk howls, questioning if the boy is actually a celestial demon. Vega suggests the young man might receive rewards for his progress. Kwano Jin asks if she knows anything about the ancient constellations. Vega freezes, wondering where he heard such a dangerous term. The young man mentions the words of the heavenly demon. Vega explains she was created by the giant founder Titan. She says Titan ruled several worlds through her divine power. Commandments were created to limit her influence on those worlds. She reveals that all constellations collapsed during the Black Heavens incident. The darkness was born from the process of world creation itself. Ancient constellations are those that perished during that ancient catastrophe. Kwano Jin asks for details regarding the modern constellations. Vega explains these stars were born only after that incident. He surmises the world perished once, and these are new arrivals. The quest reward implies he will receive a reborn ancient constellation. He thinks that if he is the black sky, the end is inevitable. The hero decides the truth is too complicated to solve today. He notes the future has already begun to shift and change. He focuses on what he must do in this new timeline. He resolves to protect what is important, even through lies. He reaches for the flash drive recovered from Chongshuko. He needs to uncover the true goals of the Dark Star Society. He wonders why some receive the constellation stigma while others perish. He vows to eliminate this injustice by awakening everyone equally. Kwano Jin studies the drive, processing the information about the society. They use hatred toward the awakened to expand their own influence. He realizes their ideology is merely an excuse for gaining power. He learns the drive contains locations of several secret branches. He finds details regarding the mysterious agents known as the Owls. John Wuong, son of the Owl King, controls the society's infiltration. He recalls Ashad Khan speaking to this man on the phone. He prepares to share this intelligence with Park Jun-woo. The next day, he finds Park Jun-woo waiting for him. Jun-woo expresses shock upon learning the identity of the society's leader. Kwon-oh-jin confirms that Jong-woo Jong runs the Dark Star Society. He asks if Jun-woo understands the danger this man poses. Jun-woo explains the association is currently split into two factions. He confirms he supports the president, while others follow the extermination squad. Jong-won leads the rival team, complicating the association's internal politics. Kwon-oh-jin asks if he was summoned because of this specific conflict. Park Jun-woo replies that they must restore the association's honor. He admits they need a Polaris disciple on their side. Kwon-oh-jin realizes the official position is a political trap. If he joins, the rival faction will gain authority over him. He decides to stick with Park Jun-woo, who holds the president's support. Kwon-oh-jin offers his assistance in the coming struggle. Jun-woo declines, saying they will handle the internal politics alone. The hero places his broken spear on the wooden table. He requests a new weapon capable of handling his power. Jun-woo suggests meeting a specialized craftsman for his needs. He mentions the Center for the Study of Sacred Relics. Kim Se heads this facility, specializing in mirror crystal equipment. They arrive at the center where Kim Se greets them warmly. The craftsman is delighted to meet the famous Lightning Wolf. He asks for an assessment of the weapon he previously crafted. Kwon-oh-jin shows him the snapped shaft of the spear. Kim Se nods, admitting he was too busy to craft it properly. He promises to build something far superior now that he is free. The hero notes that such quality will likely cost a fortune. Kim Se grins, offering to pay from his own personal funds. He claims crafting for the Lightning Wolf is a pure pleasure. Kwon-oh-jin is surprised by the offer, mentally labeling the man. He notices the broken spear and asks for a new one. Kim Se refuses, saying spears are boring and require payment. He grabs the hero's arm and leads him toward the training room. He hands Kwon-oh-jin a wooden stick for a quick test. The hero swings the stick, activating his pick spear technique. Electrical charges radiate from the tip, crackling against the floor. Park Jun-woo watches from outside, signaling that it is enough. Kim Se sits at his terminal, analyzing the movement data. He notes 300 thrusts and hundreds of horizontal strikes. He measures the stride and the hero's unique combat style. He concludes a shorter spear with a longer blade is necessary. The researcher explains that a Guanduo-type spear fits him best. He promises to finish the weapon within a week. Kwon-oh-jin is impressed by the craftsman's rapid, accurate assessment. Park Se-hoo tells him to keep a close eye on the progress. The team stands together as the air grows heavy with anticipation. Park Se-hoo offers a brief nod before turning to depart. He explains that he must focus entirely on forging the new weapon. Kwon-oh-jin watches him go and remarks on his peculiar personality. Han-jun tilts her head and calls the craftsman strange. She turns to the protagonist and asks about his long-term goals. Kwon-oh-jin replies that he intends to harvest every available myrrh crystal. He knows the Black Sky's quest remains the primary objective. Junman points toward a popular gate known for high-density spawns. He notes that monsters within this specific dungeon carry double crystals. Kwon-oh-jin envisions the potential for rapid growth and experience. He announces that the time for hesitation has passed. The group arrives at the gate 1 week later. A massive crowd of hunters gathers before the shimmering entrance. The scene resembles a chaotic festival of greed and ambition. Kwon-oh-jin observes the desperate expressions of the surrounding crowd. Rumors of the double crystal drop rate have clearly driven them mad. He finds it surreal to be surrounded by such an elite team. The group includes a constellation, a holy spirit, and a meta-human. Even Polaris's own apprentice stands among their ranks. He touches the compact arrow bracelet provided by Park Se-hoo. He explains that it stores his new weapon for easy transport. A flow of mana transforms the device into a lethal guandao. The hero feels the familiar weight and prepares for the coming battle. The team steps through the threshold and enters the dungeon. Kwon-oh-jin scans the shadows for signs of high-level threats. He notes the scarcity of other hunters in this particular zone. He reasons that the difficulty level keeps the competition thin. They venture deeper into the dark, winding corridors of the gate. The protagonist stops as he notices a clearing up ahead. Slain monsters lie scattered across the blood-stained earth. A lone archer stands in the center, looking quite satisfied. He has just finished off 3 creatures in a single volley. He gestures to the loot, noting that crystals appear everywhere. Sunhai identifies the man as Jerry Kim, a famous 6-star archer. He is a professional streamer who broadcasts his hunts live. Kwano Jin asks if streaming is a lucrative career path. Hyun explains that the fame is often the primary motivation. Jerry Kim spots the newcomers and his eyes widen in excitement. He recognizes the lightning wolf and beams with genuine delight. The archer claims that fate orchestrated this chance encounter. He invites Kwano Jin to appear as a guest on his stream. He introduces himself and offers to show the hero his clearing speed. Jerry Kim proposes a friendly competition to pass the time. He asks which of them can kill more monsters within 30 minutes. He offers to go easy on the 4-star lightning wolf. Kwano Jin sees the man's true intent behind the polite smile. The streamer wants to humiliate him before a massive live audience. The hero accepts the challenge with a calm, steady gaze. He suggests that a simple competition lacks sufficient stakes. He proposes that they wager all their collected myrrh crystals. Sunhai gasps, clearly shocked by his sudden boldness. Jerry Kim pauses, unsure if he heard the offer correctly. He wonders if a 4-star hunter is truly that confident. Kwano Jin repeats the demand and pulls out his small pouch. He insists that they bet everything they possess on the outcome. The streamer agrees, promising he will not hold back his power. He alerts his viewers and activates the official betting interface. Points fluctuate on the screen as the audience places their bets. The majority of the crowd places their faith in the 6-star archer. Jerry Kim announces the start of the 30-minute timer. The rules are simple. The final blow determines the credit. He asks to see the weapon the lightning wolf intends to use. Kwano Jin draws his guandao, its blade glowing with faint light. The streamer feels confident, relying on his superior range. He believes this is his moment to surpass the famous hero. The timer hits 0 and the hunt begins in earnest. Jerry Kim unleashes a flurry of rapid-fire energy arrows. Green monsters shriek as they scatter through the dark forest. Kwano Jin moves like a blur, his spear carving through the air. He strikes with precision, downing 3 enemies in one motion. The archer watches in disbelief as the kill count rises. Kwano Jin pivots, catching 2 monsters on his right flank. He strikes 3 more hidden in the shadows of the left. 2 additional creatures emerge from the earth beneath his feet. Jerry Kim activates his Gatling shot skill in a desperate hurry. The hero uses his harpoon bracelet to finish off a distant target. The archer fires a massive volley, destroying several beasts at once. The kill count display flickers rapidly on the floating interface. 30 minutes pass in what feels like a single heartbeat. The final tally shows 24 kills for the lightning wolf. Jerry Kim sits at only 7, his expression turning pale. The streamer struggles to process his humiliating defeat. Kwano Jin reminds him that he never claimed to be only 4-star. He smiles and clarifies that he is actually a 5-star warrior. The streamer wonders how the gap between them vanished so quickly. Kwano Jin extends his hand, waiting for the promised crystals. He insists that a man must always honor his word. Jerry Kim turns to his camera to announce the winner. Sunhai shouts that she is canceling her bet in protest. She refuses to accept the rules of the streaming platform. Kwano Jin grips her arms gently to keep her calm. He asks if she was the secret donor who bet 400 million. The streamer announces that the account named Cutie takes first place. Sunhai freezes, her face flushing with sudden embarrassment. Lark mocks the lizard woman for her bizarre behavior. Kwano Jin decides it is time to conclude the event. Lark asks if he is truly leaving after such a victory. The wolf suggests that they stay to clear more of the floor. Kwano Jin turns to his rival and offers him a rematch. A sudden, ground-shaking roar silences the entire dungeon. A massive pack of enraged monsters charges toward their position. Jerry Kim pales as he stares at the sheer number of enemies. Kwano Jin notes that the wolf's wish has finally been granted. The monsters ignore the hunters, fleeing in blind, primal terror. A gargantuan shadow rises from the depths of the darkness. A 7-star hydra emerges, its many heads hissing with malice. Sunhai recognizes the beast and wonders why it appeared here. Defeating such a boss guarantees a pair of high-quality crystals. Kwano Jin knows he cannot walk away from such a reward. He prepares his spear as the creature lunges toward him. He activates his lightning spear skill, striking the central head. He follows up with a burst of intense lightning flame. Lark joins the fray, his weapons flashing in the gloom. Vega observes from the side, noting the Hydra's arrogance. She signals that it is time for Sunhai to unleash her magic. The girl fires a torrent of flame, incinerating 2 heads instantly. The Hydra loses 3 heads in a flurry of coordinated strikes. The stumps bubble and begin to regenerate almost immediately. Jerry Kim notes that this regeneration speed is unnatural. Kwon Jin admits that he anticipated a difficult battle. He tells his team that the monster relies on its rapid recovery. Sunhai asks if he has a strategy to bypass the healing. He explains that the heads require 5 seconds to fully reform. He declares that he will sever every head within that window. Vega casts a blessing, wrapping him in a golden aura. The hero promises that everything will proceed according to plan. He focuses on the beast, knowing the real fight is beginning. Kwon Jin leaps into the air with his spear held high. He activates the transcendent skill, cloaking his body in crackling blue electricity. The spear strikes true, severing the first massive head of the Hydra. He lands on the rocky terrain and pivots instantly. 2 more strikes follow, slicing through the creature's second and third heads. The Hydra hisses, its stumps bubbling as it attempts to regenerate. Kwon Jin moves in a blur, his speed far surpassing the monster's recovery. He triggers the lightning explosion skill, sending a shockwave through the beast. The system notification flashes. Only 2 seconds remain. He pushes his Exceed skill to level 3, surging forward with lethal intent. Lurk watches from the sidelines, amazed by the hero's lightning-infused movements. Vega notes that such mastery is usually reserved for 9-star hunters. Sun Hyun steps forward, fire dancing across her palms. She tells Kwon Jin to leave the remaining heads to her. Pain flashes across her face as she channels the intense flames. She shouts that she will reduce the monster to nothing but dust. A torrent of fire engulfs the Hydra, incinerating it completely. The monster collapses, its massive body dissolving into embers. Kwon Jin approaches the girl and offers a brief word of praise. He notices a faint rhythmic glow emanating from Sun Hyun's shoulder. The girl beams with joy, announcing that her stigma has reached 8 stars. Kwon Jin smiles, acknowledging her ascent to the prestigious Aster level. Jerry Kim bows low, offering his sincere gratitude for the rescue. The hero remarks that the streaming event was surprisingly entertaining. He checks his inventory, pleased with the collection of mer crystals dropped by the boss. He activates the Black Skies skill to begin the absorption process. 1,000 crystals are required to push his progress to 100%. The progress bar stalls, signaling that low-quality crystals are no longer sufficient. He realizes that future gains will require fragments from 8-star elite monsters. Most dungeons in the country have already been cleared of such threats. He ponders his outstanding payment from the Valhalla Guild. A trade for high-quality mer crystals seems like a logical solution. Fragments of Lee Shin-hook's memories flicker into his mind. He sees a man standing on a rooftop while the city below burns. The streets are overrun by the followers of the false star cult. The memory echoes with the date, June 30th, 2 years in the past. Kwon Jin clutches his head as the vision of the disaster fades. He checks the date on his interface. It is June 24th. The impending catastrophe in Italy looms over his thoughts. He decides that preventing this tragedy is his duty as a regressor. He meets with Kim Se-young to discuss his next assignment. He requests 7-star mer crystals as his primary reward. He asks if the guild leader has heard of the False Star organization. Kim Se-young shakes her head, confirming the name is unknown to her. She identifies Isabella Colrand as a famous priestess living in Rome. Isabella became a 6-star hunter only 1 year after her awakening. She manages dozens of orphanages for victims of gate-related incidents. The guild leader mentions recent failed assassination attempts on Isabella. Speculation links the Dark Star organization to these violent attacks. Kwon Jin suspects a connection between the cult and monster-linked stigmas. If Isabella possesses a rare power, she is a prime target for the cult. He resolves to save her, securing a powerful ally for his future goals. He informs Sun Hyun that he must leave for a week-long infiltration mission. He keeps the destination vague to protect the nature of his task. Sun Hyun asks if he will be lonely, then corrects herself with a huff. She demands that he call her as soon as he is able. He steps through a portal and emerges in an Italian sanctuary. The journey takes less than an hour, leaving him in a foreign city. He activates his smartphone and checks the translation device. He wanders through the streets, finding the layout confusing and maze-like. Google Maps fails to provide a clear path to his destination. A stranger approaches from behind and lingers in his personal space. The girl blushes, apologizing for leaning in to smell his scent. She claims to be involved in local charity work. Her eyes widen as she recognizes the famous lightning wolf. Kwon Jin confirms his identity, surprised by his global reputation. The girl offers to guide him through the complex district. He finds her sudden appearance suspicious and studies her face carefully. She lifts her hat, revealing the features he saw in a guild portrait. She introduces herself as Isabella Colrand. The hero realizes this is a fortunate, if unlikely, coincidence. She asks what brought him to Rome, and he claims he is lost. Isabella leads him toward a bustling, crowded square. He decides to accept her invitation to lunch, hoping to forge a bond. The two of them sit on a stone bench near a local eatery. They share a package of Italian-style rolls while watching the street. Isabella remarks that the outing feels like a date. She glances at the nearby building and sighs, noting the location is quite drab. Isabella explains that the Roma people face constant discrimination in Italy. Helping them provides her with a sense of personal relief. She confesses that she was not born into the Roma community. She admits she was born with a heavy stigma and great talent. Isabella fears she is no better than those who discriminate against them. She wonders if she only helps them to feel superior. Kwon Jin listens, then tells her that a good deed remains a good deed. He argues that motive does not diminish the value of the outcome. He adds that focusing only on the result is as foolish as focusing only on the process. Isabella blushes and calls the young man truly unique. She expresses a wish to stay longer, but duty calls her back to work. She says goodbye and walks away into the crowd. A faint phrase in Italian leaves her lips, but the translator fails to capture it. Kwon Jin watches her depart before rising from the bench. He turns his attention toward his next objective. Paolo Tenzone, the Valhalla Guild informant, waits in a shadowed corner. He hands over a file containing intelligence on the Dark Star Society. Kwon Jin scans the documents, noting their aggressive expansion into the Marco family territory. Senor Tenzone offers to explain the nature of the Marco organization. He describes the Marco family as the iron-fisted rulers of the Italian criminal underworld. They eliminate all threats with ruthless, cold-blooded efficiency. Marco, the family patriarch, reigned as a king until the Dark Star Society appeared. Kwon Jin recalls the name from his past memories. The patriarch was once a notorious figure, listed among the 5 most evil awakened. He commands an entire mafia organization with a 9-star rating. Paolo Tenzone notes that the local population actually supports the Dark Star Society. Kwon Jin asks if the cult is truly attempting to eliminate a saint. The informant replies that it is only a strong suspicion. The timing and locations of the recent attacks coincide with the saint's movements. Kwon Jin considers calling upon the power of Vega to intervene. He decides to keep her hidden until he gauges the true strength of the cult. With her blessing, he could at least secure an escape if the battle turns sour. He thanks the informant and turns to leave the meeting point. 6 days pass in the blink of an eye. Isabella sprints through the deserted city streets, gasping for air. She darts around a sharp corner to hide from her pursuers. The footsteps of the hunters fade into the distance. She checks her mana levels and finds them completely unresponsive. Her communication devices remain dead, blocking any path to safety. She knew the Dark Star Society hunted her, but the involvement of the owls was unexpected. A shadow stretches across the pavement behind her. A young man steps into view and grabs her by the arm. He announces that he has finally captured the elusive Isabella Colrand. The villain laughs, revealing he is not alone in the alley. Isabella struggles, demanding that he release her immediately. The attacker mocks her, mentioning the curse of the Violet Forbidden Zone. He claims this advanced stigma is impossible to reverse. Isabella bites the villain's hand, drawing blood. The man screams in rage and slaps her hard across the face. A second criminal steps forward, suggesting they neutralize her before she causes more trouble. He begins to choke her, and her vision starts to blur at the edges. A sudden, blinding flash illuminates the night sky. The criminals recoil, shielding their eyes from the brilliant light. A bolt of lightning strikes the ground with a deafening crack. Kwon Jin emerges from the static, his spear leveled at the attackers. He strikes with lethal precision, forcing the criminals to retreat. He frees Isabella and offers her a reassuring smile. He claims his arrival is merely a lucky coincidence. Isabella points to the shadows, noting that they have been watched for days. Kwon Jin senses the lingering dark aura of the cultists. He grabs the girl and urges her to move toward the Tiber River. A small boat waits under the bridge, prepared for this exact moment. Isabella protests, noting that they are deep in the city center. Kwon Jin activates his harpoon bracelet and pulls her close to his waist. He explains that fleeing to a quiet area would only embolden the killers. The criminals charge, shoving past bystanders to close the distance. Kwon Jin frowns, wondering why the cult is abandoning their positive public image. The attackers swing their weapons with reckless, violent force. One villain lunges at Isabella with a sharpened blade. Kwon Jin blocks the strike with his bare hand. He channels a discharge of lightning directly into the attacker's chest. The criminal collapses, screaming in agony as his muscles seize. Isabella gasps when she notices blood dripping from the hero's palm. They reach the riverbank and scramble into the small wooden boat. Kwon Jin pushes the vessel into the current, telling her to row away. He stands on the pier, preparing to hold the line alone. Isabella refuses to leave the wounded man behind. Kwon Jin drops to one knee, his strength rapidly failing. He urges her to go, but she remains frozen in place. He asks if her charity work was ever about receiving something in return. Isabella shakes her head, tears welling in her eyes. He touches her cheek, whispering that he only wants her to reach safety. Exhaustion finally claims him, and he collapses onto the wooden planks. Isabella kneels beside him, weeping as the night deepens. She stays by his side as the hours drift by. Kwon Jin drifts into a restless, feverish sleep. He dreams of immense power and the moment he will finally crush his foes. A gang of criminals emerges from the darkness of the bridge. The leader steps forward, declaring that the girl has nowhere left to run. Isabella looks up, recognizing the menacing aura of the 9-star threat. Kwon Jin stirs, his eyes fluttering open as he considers summoning the goddess. The gang leader mocks Isabella, warning her not to attempt another trick. Kwon Jin watches, confused by the villain's tone. Isabella looks at the bandit and asks if he really still talks to women like that. She tells him that he has not changed a bit. The villain scoffs, claiming he can easily crush her without her mana. Isabella admits the curse is powerful, but notices her own stigma pulsing with dark energy. She feels her power surging as the moonlight hits her skin. Kwon Jin stares in shock, wondering if the girl truly held such power. The gang leader shouts that it is impossible for her to resist. He claims the forbidden purple curse is absolute, even against 7-star users. Isabella remains calm, noting that a 7-star rating is truly quite low. The gangster accuses her of bluffing. Kwon Jin feels a cold realization settle in his chest. He wonders what she meant by her comment on 7-star users. He questions if Isabella has been lying about her identity all along. Flickers of Lee Shin-huk's memories begin to return to him. He sees a vision of a different path, one where he met her sooner. He wonders if he could have destroyed her when she was at her weakest. He labels her a dangerous, manipulative leech in his thoughts. Lee Shin-huk's memory insists that he could have prevented the tragedy. Kwon Jin grips his head, struggling with the sudden influx of dark knowledge. He asks himself why he is only discovering the truth now. The air around Isabella begins to warp and shift. She stands, the violet glow of her stigma illuminating the riverbank. The criminals back away, sensing a shift in the hierarchy of power. Kwon Jin draws his weapon, his resolve hardening into cold steel. He realizes that the saint he intended to save might be his greatest enemy. The boat rocks gently as the tension reaches a breaking point. He prepares to make a choice that will alter the future of the world. Isabella stands amidst the ruins, her eyes glowing with a sinister, violet light. The criminals recoil, their expressions twisted into masks of pure terror. Isabella licks a drop of blood from her fingertip, her gaze icy and detached. She dismisses the fallen men as nothing more than worthless trash. The gang leader charges forward, swinging his heavy club with desperate, wild force. Isabella barely moves, catching his weapon with a single, slender finger. The man collapses to his knees, clutching a deep, bleeding wound in his chest. Isabella stares down at him, her voice cold as she orders him to stop speaking. The villain begs for mercy, but the Queen of Leeches remains unmoved. With a swift, fluid motion, she delivers a finishing strike to his neck. The gang leader's head hits the ground, rolling into the dark, damp mud. Kwano Jin watches from the ground, his consciousness flickering in and out of focus. He knows Isabella is a high-ranking member of the dangerous Dark Star Society. The memory of the false star cult spreading across Italy haunts his thoughts. He resolves to cut all ties with this woman before she claims his life. Isabella turns toward him, her expression softening into a mask of false affection. She strokes his cheek, calling him sweeter than honey and handsome as a prince. Kwano Jin forces a weak smile, wishing the entire encounter was a fever dream. He wakes up hours later, finding himself resting in a sterile hospital room. Isabella sits by his bedside, her eyes bright with a disturbing level of devotion. She explains that the local Kalander family provided this safe, private facility. Kwano Jin sits up, his heart sinking as he realizes his reality has not changed. He apologizes to her, claiming he is not worthy of her continued care. Isabella leans close, her breath warm against his face as she questions his intentions. She asks if he truly plans to stay by her side in Italy forever. Kwano Jin nods slowly, promising to return once he grows stronger. He knows he must play this game to survive the coming storm. The two stand near a glowing portal at the edge of a quiet forest. Isabella kisses his cheek, a genuine blush coloring her pale porcelain skin. She waves goodbye, promising to send word to him when the time is right. Kwano Jin steps through the rift, leaving the dangerous woman behind him. He arrives in the Purgatory realm, where Vega waits with an anxious expression. The goddess demands to know if he saved the saint from the cultists. Kwano Jin looks away, his eyes brimming with tears of genuine frustration. He tells her that he saved the saint, but the truth is far worse. He confesses that Isabella is a high-ranking asset of the Dark Star organization. Vega sighs, acknowledging that the situation has grown significantly more volatile. Kwano Jin explains his plan to use her obsession as a strategic weapon. He intends to extract information about the cult while keeping her under control. Vega nods, telling him that the threads of fate have shifted since their meeting. Kwano Jin feels a surge of confidence, believing his gamble was a success. He tells the goddess he must return home to check on Sun Hyan. He stops at the association building, hoping to gather intelligence on the internal factions. Han Junman meets him in the lobby, his face grave and full of caution. He reports that Zhong Wang has been quietly expanding his security control centers. These centers claim to protect the unawakened, but their true purpose remains hidden. Kwano Jin wonders if they are copying the manipulative tactics of the Dark Star. A young man approaches them, introducing himself as the association's executive director. Zhong Wang smiles, though his eyes remain cold, calculating, and entirely void of warmth. Kwano Jin recognizes him as the son of the powerful Owl King. He notes that this man is the primary rat infiltrating the association's ranks. Zhong Wang asks why a hero of his caliber is visiting the headquarters today. Kwano Jin lies smoothly, claiming he is preparing for a long trip to Italy. Zhong Wang's smile falters for a fraction of a second at the mention of the saint. He clearly fears Isabella, having failed in his previous attempts to eliminate her. The two men shake hands, the air between them thick with unspoken threats. Zhong Wang wishes him luck, hoping for a friendly alliance with the saint. As Kwano Jin walks away, the director pulls out his phone to make a call. He speaks to his father, reporting that the lightning wolf has caught the saint's eye. The elder warns him that if the boy becomes an obstacle, he must be destroyed. Zhong Wang stares at a portrait of his mother, his grip tightening on the phone. He vows to avenge her, his hatred burning bright beneath his professional exterior. Kwano Jin exits the building, knowing he will eventually face this man in battle. He decides to spread their notoriety, ensuring the world learns their true nature. Hunger gnaws at him, reminding him that the day is nearing its end. He stops at a stall and purchases 2 hamburgers for a quick dinner. The scent of the food brings back memories of his former, simpler life. He thinks of Sun Hyan waiting for him, his resolve to return strengthening. Suddenly, a shadow falls over him as a group of men blocks his path. The mysterious young man studies the glowing object in his hand. He wonders if this artifact is the 3rd fragment he needs. The power of the awakened Li Shinhuk flows into his grasp. Liu Hyuk signals his brother to increase their running pace. He warns that their persistent pursuers remain close behind them. Kwon Jin watches the two brothers from a hidden distance. He notes that Lee Shin-huk has changed significantly over 2 years. The older brother easily matches the speed of his younger sibling. Lee Shin-huk calls out to ask about the location of their sister. Woo-huk replies that she waits for them at the nearby shore. Kwon Jin narrows his eyes in genuine surprise at the news. He questions the identity of this mysterious older sister. The brothers reach the water and find a girl waiting. She scolds them for arriving much later than she expected. Lee Huk bows his head and offers a sincere apology. Kwon Jin leans forward to get a clearer view of the scene. His eyes widen as he recognizes the woman standing on the sand. The older sister is none other than Sun Ha-yoon. He struggles to comprehend how she could be standing here. Sun Ha-yoon adjusts a thick bandage covering her left eye. She commands the brothers to drop to the ground immediately. The girl raises her hand and ignites a powerful fire skill. A torrent of flames launches toward the approaching enemy group. The brothers duck low as the heat scorches the air above. Their pursuers scream as the magical fire consumes them entirely. Sun Ha-yoon stands amidst the smoke with a furious expression. Lee Woo-huk rushes to her side to check for injuries. He asks with concern if her eye is causing her pain. The girl waves him off and insists she is perfectly fine. She mentions that Lee Shin-huk spent a fortune on that eye. She notes that he had to prove his worth to the world. Shin-huk replies that he bought it for her out of love. He rejects the idea that it was some kind of transaction. Sun Ha-yoon states that she will repay him for this gesture. She adds that she has too many pressing matters to handle today. A proposal arrives for them to leave the country of Italy. The girl confirms that all her lost memories are finally restored. Kwon Jin listens from the sidelines in a state of confusion. He fails to grasp the connection between these people and himself. He wonders if Lee Shin-hyuk truly bought Sun Ha-yoon's eye. The questions about his own past life weigh heavily on him. He thinks about the time he spent trying to protect her. If she lived through those events, why did he destroy the world? The gaps in his knowledge leave him feeling profoundly unsettled. Sun Ha-yoon turns toward the road as the sun begins to set. She catches sight of a familiar figure approaching the shoreline. The girl's face flushes with anger as she spots Kwon Jin. She demands to know why he failed to call her earlier. She reminds him that she explicitly asked him to stay in touch. Kwon Jin steps forward and wraps his arms around her. He whispers that he has finally returned to her side. Sun Ha-yoon freezes in place, clearly shocked by his sudden affection. She asks if he truly missed her that much while away. Kwon Jin asks if she believes she still owes him a debt. The girl pauses for a long moment before answering his question. She admits she is no longer certain about her previous feelings. She asks if her presence by his side is not repayment enough. Kwon Jin smiles and produces a bag of steaming hot food. He reveals that he purchased several delicious burgers for dinner. Sun Ha-yoon gazes at the food and admits she feels quite awkward. He suggests they find a quiet place to eat immediately. The girl grabs the car keys and gestures toward the vehicle. She expresses a sudden desire to go for a long drive. They climb into the car and speed down the empty road. Sun Ha-yoon parks near the seashore with a view of the bridge. Kwon Jin agrees that the location offers a beautiful, peaceful view. He opens a burger and notices the meat has gone cold. Hyen reminds him that a cold meal was once a luxury. Kwon Jin briefly wonders if he should have invited Vega and Lara. Hyen looks at him with visible indignation at the mention of others. She asks if he does not enjoy spending time alone with her. He replies that his thought process is not about her at all. He admits to himself that he has started to like Vega too. He remembers the goddess warning him not to rush his plans. Vega now places her complete trust in his every word. He knows that the more she trusts him, the worse her betrayal. He fears the moment she discovers his true, hidden identity. He has sacrificed everything to earn her favor and her grace. He understands that he is not the hero she thinks he is. The day will come when their fragile bond shatters into pieces. He wonders if he possesses the strength to survive that pain. He desperately wants to end this cycle of suffering and lies. If he breaks down now, he cannot protect Sun Ha-yoon. He realizes he must navigate a life filled with unseen interference. He refuses to accept a future where he loses her as well. Sun Ha-yoon gently tells him not to lose his internal resolve. She admits she lacks the details but promises him everything is fine. She assures him that she will always stand by his side. Kwon Jin recalls her childhood promise to trust in her. He rests his weary head on her shoulder and closes his eyes. Hyen asks how he could have possibly survived without her help. He replies that he would have been lost in the darkness. Sunyan pulls him into a warm, tight embrace under the moonlight. They sit in total silence on the bench for a long time. The girl whispers that his presence is vital to her life. Kwano Jin decides that his past life no longer holds power. The only thing that matters is the present moment they share. He looks at her and offers a quiet, sincere word of thanks. Suddenly, a notification chime rings loudly from his hidden phone. He checks the screen and sees a message from the association. The text warns that the Owl King has begun his final move.